Good morning, youth parliamentarians, chairman of the Parliamentary Youth Committee, other members of the committee, honorable leader of the opposition. Good morning, everyone. And Deputy Speaker, sorry I missed you. Apology. Good morning, youth parliamentarians. I just want you to know how proud I am that you all have taken time out of your busy schedule, because I know you're just coming off, a lot of you are just coming off of exams and et cetera, that you took the time to prepare for this debate this morning. And I know that the standard at which you debated in March, I expect that today, now that you have had that event, is going to be even better. So I look forward with great anticipation as to your contributions to this very important and timely topic. So once again, thank you all very much, and I look forward to listening to you. And even if I'm not in here, I'll be in my office listening to you. So be on your best behavior. Always remember what my grandmother taught me on many occasions. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And as I tell the regular MPs who sit in these chairs, it's very important that you advocate strongly for the position that you believe in and that you're committed to. But there is no need to be adversarial. Adversariality in a debate does not really add to the quality of your debate. So enjoy yourselves, be attentive, make great contributions, and once again, thank you all very much for coming today to debate this very important topic. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable D. Ezard Miller, esteemed colleagues, my Honorable Leader of Opposition, former Premier, Mr. Wayne Panton, Honorable Deputy Speaker of Parliament, the Honorable Perlina McGraw-Lumsden, fellow committee member, Mr. Roy Tatum, former past parliamentarians, Ms. Lucille Seymour, special guest, dedicated staff, all parliamentary colleagues, our listening and viewing audiences at home and across the Cayman Islands, but most importantly, to our YPs, good morning. Allow me to take this opportunity to welcome the reigning Miss Universe Cayman Islands, Miss Seymour, who is in the audience, as well as the candidates for the Miss Teen competition coming up next month. As the chairman of the Youth Parliament Organization Committee, it is my absolute privilege to welcome you all to this historic occasion, the first ever Youth Parliament Summer Debate. To our listening audience, thank you for tuning in. And if you are watching via our social media channels, please share this link with everyone you know in your group chats. This topic being brought before this chamber today is one of national importance, and it will have a profound and lasting impact on the lives of our young people, shaping how they interact with technology and society if and when the transition into formal legislation and becomes law. Today is not just another ceremonial gathering of young people. What makes this occasion completely historic is a first ever in the Cayman Islands Youth Parliament, is that these young people are not just debating a hypothetical scenario. They are entering this chamber to debate a live, actual members' motion, private members' motion, that has already been considered and passed by the main parliament of the Cayman Islands. In our standard parliamentary process, a motion passed by the House directs the government to consider the principles laid out in its whereas clauses. Today, we're turning the tables in a beautiful way. Before this goes to the formal bill stage, we are placing this exact motion directly in the hands of the most significant stakeholders in the country, our youth. This is a true exercise of public consultation. We are here to listen to the unique viewpoints of each and every one of the young people which this policy will affect. This is their opportunity as youth parliamentarians to directly influence real policy and potentially future legislation. The eyes of the country and the eyes of the lawmakers are on each and every one of you. Before I delve into the substance of the motion, it is vital to explain the unique and deliberate technical departure from our standard parliamentary practice today. In an ordinary youth parliament debate, the outcomes are somewhat often predictable. We, as committee members, can usually look at the political divide, look at the numbers assigned to the government and the opposition, and normally can anticipate how the votes will fall. Today, we have completely stripped away any scripts. For this historic debate, there is no cabinet that is bound by collective responsibility. This is why you will notice that when the speaker will not be addressing anyone as the Honourable Minister for this or the Honourable Minister for that. Instead, every single participant will be addressed strictly by their title as the representative for the designated constituencies. The Premier and Deputy Premier, the Leader of Opposition and the Deputy Leader of Opposition will continue to be addressed by their titles due to protocol. We have given our youth parliamentarians the special privilege of a free conscience vote. Every single member of this chamber is entirely free from party lines and expected alliances. They will debate, listen, and vote purely on their conscience and their convictions. Consequently, nobody in this room, not myself, not the committee, not the media, knows whether this motion will pass or fail today. We have genuinely left it that way so that the country can get a completely raw, authentic, and unfiltered response from our young people. To ensure absolute transparency, at the conclusion of this debate, we will be calling for a division. Every vote will be individual, and every vote will be counted on the record, so the country can see the true perspective of these youth parliamentarians. Remember, these students represent the absolute best crop of talent from almost every school across the Cayman Islands. They are here today representing not just themselves, but the genuine viewpoints of their schools, their peers, and their wider community. The motion before this House today is Private Member's Motion number 3 of 2026, limiting social media for children under the age of 16. It asks the government to consider introducing a legislative framework to protect the mental health, sleep cycles, and cognitive development of our young people from the documented harms of intensive social media use. It rightfully frames it not as a restriction on free speech, but as a protective public health measure. There is no group of individuals better suited to debate the realities, the challenges, and the nuances and the protections of this framework than the young people sitting in the chairs before you today. They are the digital natives. They understand the benefits of digital literacy, but they also live with the daily pressures of online world, and we need their perspective moving forward. An initiative of this magnitude does not happen in a vacuum, though. It takes immense vision, dedication, and tireless work behind the scenes. And so, to the mover, and the seconder, we give credit and recognize the original authors of the motion in the mean Parliament, the Honourable Deputy Speaker, Ms. Perlina McGaw-Lumsden of Georgetown West, who moved the original motion, and to Mr. Roy Tatum of Red Bay, who seconded it. Thank you both for your leadership and for allowing our youth to inherit this vital debate today. To the mother of our youth parliament, please allow me this moment to highlight someone whose name isn't always at the front page, but whose heart and soul are poured into this program today. I'm speaking about our assistant clerk, Ms. Nordra Walcott. In my 3 terms as an elected representative, I've seen this program grow from the embryonic stages into the powerhouse that it is today. That growth is due to the dedication, consistent, and unwavering commitment of Ms. Walcott. She's here on the weekends, holidays, late evenings, working tirelessly and giving up her personal time without any extra compensation, simply because she cares deeply about our young people, their development and involvement within our democracy. And I'm certain that our students would agree with me when I say she truly is the mother of the Youth Parliament Committee, and we owe her a massive debt of gratitude. Thank you. Ms. Walcott, maybe you may want to stand up so people can see who you are. Now, to the parents and guardians behind these brilliant minds in this chamber today stands a dedicated support system at home. I want to take a moment to express, on behalf of the Youth Parliament Committee and my other colleagues, our deepest gratitude to each and every one of you parents and guardians of our youth parliamentarians. Thank you for your unwavering commitment, for investing your time, and for providing steady encouragement and support necessary to get them through the weeks of intensive training. By allowing and empowering your children to participate in this process, you are not only supporting their personal growth, but you are also actively contributing to the democratic future of the Cayman Islands. Thank you for your hard work and your partnership. To our Honourable Youth Parliament Premier, to our Honourable Youth Parliament Leader of Opposition, and to every single youth parliamentarian seated here today, I really want to wish you the very best of luck. Remember that your country is listening. Every word that you utter bears a heavy responsibility. Though you are technically youth parliamentarians, today you are acting as members of Parliament. This is the real deal. Treat this floor with the reverence it deserves. Speak with conviction. Respect the rules of this honorable house, and let your voices be heard clearly. With that, it is my distinct honor to officially declare the opening of this historic Summer Youth Parliament debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good luck to each and every one of you.
This honorable first Summer Youth Parliament session is now in session. I will now ask the Honorable Premier to say prayers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May you bow your heads and close your eyes. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for thy safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our sovereign, King Charles III, William, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the governor of our islands, the premier, the speaker of the parliament, the leader of the opposition, ministers of the cabinet, ex officio members, members of the parliament, the chief justice, and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated.
Reading of messages and announcements by the Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, youth parliamentarians, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This Honorable Youth Parliament debate now turns its attention to Private Members' Motion Number 3 of 2026, entitled Limiting Social Media for Children Under the Age of 16. This motion asks us to consider whether the government of the Cayman Islands should introduce legislation to prohibit access to social media platforms for children under the age of 16 as a measure of child protection and public health. As Youth Parliament Speaker, I remind honorable members that this debate should be approached with seriousness, respect, and thoughtfulness. Members may hold different views on whether such a restriction is necessary, practical, proportionate, or enforceable. Some may focus on the responsibilities of parents, some on the responsibilities of social media companies, and others on the duty of the government to protect children from preventable harm. This motion also raises important questions about age verification, data privacy, constitutional protections, digital literacy, mental health support, and stakeholder consultation. This is exactly the kind of issue that Youth Parliament exists to examine. It affects young people directly, and it requires young people to speak with maturity, evidence, and conviction. Today, this Honorable Youth Parliament has the opportunity to consider how the Cayman Islands can respond to the challenges of the digital age while keeping the best interests of the child at the center of public policy. I want to use this opportunity to also thank the Youth Parliament Committee, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, the clerk, Ms. Zina, and Assistant Clerk, Ms. Nordra Walcott, for the work they have done throughout the program and the confidence they have placed in us. I now invite honorable members to engage in this debate with dignity, clarity, and respect for opposing views. Let us ensure that your contributions reflect not only your personal opinions, but also your responsibility as youth representatives to consider the well-being of children, families, schools, and the wider Cayman Islands community. Thank you, and God bless. I recognize the elected member for West Bay Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move a motion to suspend Standing Order 4912 to allow members to read their speeches.
The question is that Standing Order 4912 be suspended to enable members to read their speeches. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Standing Order 4912 is hereby suspended.
Other business, private members' motion. Private members' motion number 3 of 2026. Limiting social media for children under the age of 16. To be moved by the elected member for Bordentown West and seconded by the elected member for Savannah.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Private members' motion number 1 of 3, 2026. Limiting social media for children under the age of 16. Whereas the government of the Cayman Islands has a duty of safeguarding the welfare and mental health and healthy development of children and young persons, and whereas a growing body of evidence indicates that intensive use of social media is associated with increased risk of anxiety, depression, sleep disruption, as well as cyberbullying, online exploitation, addictive behaviors, and exposures to inappropriate content, the scale of which presents population-level mental health concerns. And whereas children under the age of 16 are in critical stages of cognitive and social development, and the evidence of potential harms from intensive social media use justifies precautionary age-based protections grounded in child welfare principles, and whereas multiple jurisdictions, including Australia and several European and Asian nations, have either proposed or enacted legislation recognizing such measures as proportionate and child protection interventions rather than limitations on freedom of expression, and whereas this Honorable House recognizes the positive role of digital technologies in education, creativity, communication, and economic participation, and affirms that responsible digital technology is compatible with strong child protection standards, and that these measures seek to delay rather than permanently deny access until an appropriate stage of cognitive maturity. Be it therefore resolved that this government considers the introduction of legislation to prohibit access to social media platforms by persons under the age of 16 years within the Cayman Islands as a child protection and public health measure. And be it further resolved that this government considers that any such legislation shall place primary responsibility for compliance, age verification, and enforcement on social media platform operators and shall not criminalize or penalize children or young persons. And be it further resolved that this government considers that social media platforms shall be defined as digital services for social interaction and content sharing, and shall exclude educational platforms, messaging services used primarily for private communication, essential services required for school or public services. And be it further resolved that the government considers that the proposed framework shall include proportionate regulatory sanctions for non-compliant platforms while ensuring safeguards for data privacy, user rights, and constitutional protections. And be it further resolved that this government considers accompanying the legislation with public education initiatives, including digital literacy programs for parents and accessible mental health resources for young people. And be it further resolved that this government considers that the legislation shall be subject to periodic review to ensure it is consistent with constitutional protections and remains consistent with human rights obligations and the principle of proportionality. And be it further resolved that this government considers commencing stakeholder consultation and legislative drafting without delay, recognizing the urgency of protecting children from demonstrable and preventable digital harms, and affirms that this resolution shall not be construed as an endorsement of censorship, surveillance, or content-based regulation, but as a child protection and public health measure grounded in evidence, proportionality, and the best interest of our child or children.
Honorable member, you forgot to say you beg to move the motion. So just for the record, could you just say you beg to move the motion?
My apologies. I beg to move the motion. Thank you.
The motion has been duly moved. Is there a seconder to the motion? I recognize the elected member for Savannah.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second private member's motion number 3 of 2026.
The motion has been duly moved and seconded. Does the mover wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as the mover of this motion. And before I begin, I must admit something that I find genuinely disappointing. This motion addresses one of the most important issues facing our generation, the well-being of children in the digital age. Yet I do not believe it has been thought through as carefully as it should have been. As the mover, I support the principle behind this motion. I support protecting our children. I support limiting harmful social media use. But I cannot honestly stand here and argue the amount to a blanket ban when the evidence is indeed the wording of the motion itself is contradictory. Mr. Speaker, this is too serious of an issue for slogans. Children today are growing up in a world where social media shapes how they think, how they learn, how they communicate, and even how they see themselves. We know that excessive use can be linked to anxiety, depression, sleep deprivation, cyberbullying, addictive behaviors, and exposure to harmful content. These are real problems that deserve real solutions. But good intentions alone do not make good policy. And this motion is just that. I do not believe our parliament did the proper research to claim in all surety that these methods of prevention are truly effective. The UK and Australia stand as examples that this isn't an easy task to accomplish and will take more work than they have written on paper. One of my greatest concerns is that this motion places primary responsibility of enforcement on social media companies. Mr. Speaker, are we really comfortable leaving the safety of our children in the hands of billion-dollar corporations whose business model depends on keeping people online for as long as possible? These companies make money from engagement. Their largest and fastest growing audience is our young people. Expecting them to willingly place their own biggest customer on a limit is unrealistic. They have financial incentives that do not always align with the best interest of our children. We cannot continue outsourcing our responsibilities to to society, corporations. The government has responsibilities. Schools has responsibilities. Or communities have responsibilities. But most importantly, our parents have responsibilities. No law can replace good parenting. No algorithm can replace guidance. And no age verification system can replace conversations around the dinner table. Parents know their children better than any government database or technology company will ever will. They understand their child's maturity, emotional development, and their needs. If a child is struggling with excessive social media use, it is the parents who should be setting boundaries within the home. This may mean limiting screen time. This may mean there are no phones during meals. It may mean device staying in the bedroom when staying outside of the bedroom when they're going to bed. These are limitations. These are practical. These are enforceable. And most importantly, they're based on relationship rather than surveillance. Now, I am not suggesting that parents should carry this burden alone. The government absolutely has a role to play. But the government should not be more concerned about your child's health, well-being, and your child's future and the influence of social media on their lives than you. That's why I believe before we run trying to negotiate with billion-dollar companies who don't care about what they're showing a 7-year-old, our parliament should invest in digital literacy programs for both children and parents. That way, our parents are educated and know how to protect their children to the fullest. In this day and age, our future needs to know how to protect themselves from the dangers online and become resilient to the predators who try to make their individualities extinct. That solution is very different from expecting multinational corporations to become the primary guardians of our children. Mr. Speaker, we should also remember that not all social media use is harmful. Young people use digital platforms to learn, collaborate, express creativity, maintain friendships, and access educational opportunities. The motion itself acknowledges the positive role that digital technologies play in education, communication, creativity, and economic participation. That is why proportionality matters. A balanced approach that protects our children without unnecessarily restricting opportunities. A balanced approach that teaches responsible use rather than pretending technology doesn't exist. Because the reality is this: the day the child turns 16, social media doesn't immediately come safe. The real protection comes from gradually teaching digital responsibility long before the birthday arrives. That is why education and parental guidance are more sustainable than prohibition alone. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know some will
Honorable
argue...
Leader, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, I'm the mover. I have 9 minutes. May I continue? Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I know some will argue that not only a complete ban sends a strong message, but the reinforcement. And Mr. Speaker, I have to say to that, strength is not measured by how extreme the policy sounds. Strength is measured by whether the policy actually works. History teaches us outright that bans often create workarounds. Mr. Speaker, I hope and pray our parliament is not simply following a global trend. We have seen similar measures attempted in UK and Australia, and what did we learn? We saw that simply banning access or relying entirely on social media companies to enforce age restrictions has not worked. This is why I expected more thought and care to be put into this motion. It is not enough to just simply hop on a global trend because we see others doing it. We must ground our policy in evidence, in what works, in the realities of our community. Young people have become experts at finding VPNs, borrowing accounts, or using alternative platforms. A policy looks tough on paper, but is impossible to enforce, ultimately protects no one. Reasonable limitations combined with education, parental involvement, and responsible regulation are far more likely to succeed. So today I ask the House not to just focus on punishment, but protection. It is unrealistic to expect billion-dollar companies. Okay, Mr. Speaker, may I end? Close?
Yes,
quickly?
you may.
Thank you. Honestly, I commend the principle of the motion to the House, and I ask that we look at social media as a limitation, not as a ban. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Georgetown East.
Esteemed MPs, my fellow youth parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, good day. Today, I am here to address a very important and controversial topic regarding the safety and mental well-being of our youth in regards to social media. I would like to preface that this is a very nuanced topic, and as a teenager myself, I have been able to see the ins and outs of social media. While reading the motion, the second whereas clause jumped out at me. It says, a growing body of evidence indicates that the intensive use of social media is associated with increased risk of anxiety, depression, sleep disruption, as well as cyberbullying, online exploitation, addictive behaviors, and exposure to age-inappropriate content, the scale of which presents a mental health concern, end quote. This clause jumped out to me because, as stated before, I have seen the good and bad of social media, and this expertly highlights the bad. It showcases exactly how social media may negatively impact and endanger our youth. There are, in fact, international studies showing the link between growing social media use and deteriorating mental health. But has it occurred to you, MPs, that maybe all social media has been doing is educating our youth on their mental health, making it so that more cases of declining mental health are spotted and reported? Regardless, it should be noted that these studies focus on their respective countries and territories in the UK, in Australia, in the United States. It is very important that as the future of Cayman, when thinking about the future of Cayman, we should cater to the people of Cayman. The areas that I listed above have different cultures. Their youth have different upbringings and interests than ours here. They do different activities in their downtime, and frankly, have more options for activities to do in their downtime. Grand Cayman and her sister islands are all quite small, with little to entertain our curious youth. What do you want them to do with no social media, not only for entertainment, but access to the world? Let's be real. Does everyone have the money to send their children to 10 places every week, or to fund a bunch of time-consuming extracurricular activities? No. So when banning social media, MPs, that is a huge thing to take into consideration. Social media functions as a tool for self-expression, a facilitator of communication for people from different areas with different and similar interests. Taking it away will mean for many teenagers taking away their online friendships or communities of people where they are able to feel seen and heard in a way that they might not be with their peers in school. While the motion does not consider private messaging as social media, most bonds and friendships online begin on social media and are maintained there before moving onto private messaging platforms such as WhatsApp. Taking away social media will be taking away a teenager's outlet for their self-expression and manifestation of creativity. Because believe it or not, social media platforms encourage creativity. These communities are vibrant and alive and thriving on social media. Cutting off our teens from social media will be cutting them off from a piece of their self-expression. Banning our teens from social media will basically be banning them from the outside world, banning them from the news, not just traditional, but independent. And not just independent, but seeing what is going on in places from a first-hand point of view from those being directly affected. Let's be real with ourselves. How many official news outlets do you see reporting on Gaza anymore? Or Sudan, or the DRC, or Yemen, or the long-going conflicts in Ukraine? Because when I start counting, I must say I come up short. Social media, however, makes sure that I am kept updated and aware, and can't feign ignorance on important world matters. To stand here and say that social media is good or social media is bad just doesn't sit right with me, because there is no clear or linear argument for either. But it is a fact that we need to limit the harm that comes from it. The right answer, however, is not to completely ban young people from social media. This House of Parliament, with an average age quite above 30, is not able to experience the effects of social media like my fellow youth parliamentarians. They don't see the positive and respectfully might not be able to understand the new day and age that we are in. While social media can be said to negatively affect mental health, it also brings a needed awareness to it. It gets rid of the stigma and gives people the confidence to seek help. It gives victims a place to come forward and share their stories without being too scared. There are many good things to social media. It can be a useful tool or a dangerous weapon. Statistics have shown that the best form of prevention is education. To stop a disaster before it is even put into motion, people need to be able to see the signs and see where they are going wrong and stop themselves. If this government pushes for education on social media awareness, funding more digital literacy campaigns, as suggested by the motion and expounded upon by the mover, I certainly am confident that we will see a decline in the issues that we are observing pertaining to social media. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise to oppose this motion to limit social media for people under the age of 16. Mr. Speaker, I speak on this issue from a perspective that many members of this honorable House simply cannot. As a 15-year-old, I experienced the realities of social media firsthand. I do not need to imagine how young people use it. I live it every day. I see young people using social media not just for entertainment, but for positive networking, connections, and to create opportunities that simply did not exist a generation ago. Yes, I also see the challenges that come with it. But one thing I know for certain, a ban is not the solution. Mr. Speaker, restricting young people from social media in 2026 will not suddenly take us back to the 1980s. Technology is here to stay. Social media is now a part of everyday life, and we cannot solve modern problems with outdated thinking. In my own survey of young Caymanians, many said that social media helps them. When asked what most affects their mental health, they pointed to school pressures, home life, and personal circumstances, not social media itself. Even more telling, 61% of Caymanian respondents said that they are either strongly or somewhat against this proposed ban. The motion suggests banning platforms like TikTok and Instagram. But restricting well-moderated platforms risks pushing young people into smaller, less regulated websites with more harmful content and fewer safety precautions. After Australia's social media ban, the Molly Rose Foundation found that 3 in 5 children aged 12 to 15 still accessed restricted social media accounts. 51% said the ban made no difference to their online safety, and 1 in 7 said it actually made them feel less safe online. Mr. Speaker, if the ban does not stop children from accessing social media, and it doesn't improve their safety, then what exactly does it achieve? That brings me to the fourth be it further resolved. It proposes regulatory sanctions for platforms that fail to enforce the ban. Mr. Speaker, I disagree. Instead of punishing platforms for not enforcing an unrealistic ban, why is Cayman not enforcing stronger sanctions for platforms that fail to protect young people? Why are we not requiring stronger moderation, stricter age verifications where appropriate, better reporting systems, and quicker removal of harmful content? Let's regulate safety, not access. Mr. Speaker, there's another question we must ask ourselves. What magically changes when a child turns 16? If the concern is protecting children, let's have that conversation honestly. All it does is create a generation of 16-year-olds who are suddenly handed social media with little experience, low digital literacy, and less understanding of how to recognize online dangers. Mr. Speaker, we do not prepare our young people for the digital world by locking the door until their 16th birthday. We prepare them by teaching them how to navigate it safely long before they get there. But, Mr. Speaker, this motion does not solve the concerns around social media. It simply delays it. As Member of Parliament of the United Kingdom, Emily Darlington rightly asked, what makes a 17-year-old girl less vulnerable to online grooming than a 15-year-old? Predators do not check birth certificates. Instead of banning young people, shouldn't we be preventing strangers from contacting them in the first place? And if social media becomes something young people are punished for using, those experiencing cyberbullying, blackmail, stalking, or harassment may become even less likely to seek help because of fear of getting in trouble themselves. Mr. Speaker, not every young person has a happy home to go back to. For some, social media is not just entertainment. It's an escape. It's a support system. It's where they find encouragement, creative expression, or simply someone to talk to after a difficult day. Research from the National Center of Biotechnology Information of the United States shows that 67% of adolescents say social media helps them find support during difficult times. And 80% says it helps them stay connected with friends and family. Should we really be taking that away from all young people in Cayman under 16 because some misuse it? Finally, Mr. Speaker, this ban is unrealistic. Children will find ways around it. Young people know how to use VPNs, alternate accounts, family accounts, and countless other methods. So I ask this honorable House, are we really going to implement another dysfunctional system into Cayman after 2 countries has already shown us that it does not work? Are we going to ignore the warning signs simply because banning something sounds like an easy solution? Mr. Speaker, isn't it ironic that government members as well as opposition both use social media every day to connect with young people, share policies, and encourage engagement? If social media is important enough for politicians to communicate with the youth, surely it's important enough to trust young people to use it responsibly with the right safeguards and measure. Mr. Speaker, the answer is not to prohibit. The answer is education. The answer is accountability, and the answer is stronger protections. Let's not throw away the baby with the bathwater. And above all, the answer is listening to the voices of our Caymanian youth before making decisions that affect our future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for West Bain South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to the complexity and importance of this motion, I respectfully ask for an additional 45 seconds to my speaking time.
You may have it.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today as a 16-year-old, 8th generation Caymanian who is sick and tired of hearing my fellow youth have our voices stifled by outdated opinions. I am grateful to have the opportunity today to join this conversation and echo the voices of our wider youth. As the Deputy Governor, Honorable France Manderson, said in the debate on this private member's motion, we have to accept that the world we grew up in is over. If that is true, then we must also accept that the voices of today's youth deserve to help shape tomorrow's policies. While this proposed prohibition would not affect the members debating this motion, or me personally, as I am over 16, I speak for the generation that will follow. I grew up in a world where social media has always been a part of everyday life. I grew up where it shaped my story. I think about my friends, my future children and grandchildren who will live with the consequences of the motion and the decisions made today. So before I begin, allow me to tell you a short story. Mr. Speaker, a 14-year-old has just moved to Cayman. A new school, new classmates, new island, and that evening she opens Instagram. She follows a few classmates, discovers a local football club, sees youth events happening that weekend, and finally begins to feel like she belongs. Now imagine telling that young person that because she is 14 years old, she must wait another 2 years to feel like she belongs. Not because she has misused social media, no, Mr. Speaker, but because the government assumes she might. Mr. Speaker, this motion is not about whether social media has its risks. It does. The question before this honorable House today is whether banning it for every young person under 16 is good public policy or simply good political theater. Today, I oppose this motion for 3 reasons. Firstly, this motion mistakes correlation for causation. Second, it prioritizes restriction before education. And third, Mr. Speaker, it overlooks the real causes of youth mental health challenges while underestimating young people's ability to navigate the digital world responsibly. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make one more observation about the motion itself. After listening to the official debate and reading the Hansard on this private member's motion, moved by the Honorable Deputy Speaker, elected member for Georgetown South, Ms. Perlina McGaw-Lumsden. West, sorry. I found it disheartening to see that no honorable member challenged this motion's inconsistency. The title asks this House to consider limiting social media access for those under 16. Yet the very first be it further resolved clause proposes to prohibit anyone under 16 from creating or maintaining social media accounts. Mr. Speaker, those are not the same thing. If this House is being asked to vote on legislation affecting thousands of young people, the proposal should be clear, consistent, and precise. Legislation should not leave this House guessing or interpreting whether we are voting for a limit or a ban. This distinction is far too important to be left ambiguous. The motion tells us that intensive social media use is associated with anxiety, depression, cyberbullying, and sleep disruption. Notice the key word, associated, and that distinction matters because if we continue to confuse correlation with cause, we risk writing laws that are solving the wrong problems. Young people experience anxiety and depression for a multitude of reasons: academic pressure, family conflict. Mr. Speaker, I worry this motion risks overlooking the real reasons behind Cayman's youth mental health crisis. If a young person is struggling because they are grieving, facing financial instability, dealing with waiting months for professional support, removing Instagram will not remove those problems. In doing so, it comes across as dismissive of this generation, as though their mental health struggles can simply be explained away by the apps on their smartphones, and their challenges are far more complex than that. The motion also points to Australia and several European countries. I appreciate that comparison, but adopting legislation elsewhere does not prove it is effective, especially when it remains too early to measure its long-term impact. And even if improvements in mental health are eventually seen, it remains difficult to determine whether they resulted from restricting social media itself or from wider investments in other reforms. And that is precisely why we must be cautious when we present prohibition as the solution. Now to my second point, the internet is not going away. Social media is not a passing trend. It will be part of our society long after every one of us has left this chamber. Eventually, every young person will enter that online world. Whether at 16, 18, or 21, the platforms may change. Mr. Speaker, the technology may evolve, but the digital world will remain. And the question is not whether young people will eventually use social media. The question is whether they will be prepared when they do. And that is why I believe education should not only be an addition to this motion, Mr. Speaker, it should be the starting point. I respectfully suggest we have this order backwards. Teach the young people first. Equip them first. Support parents first. Strengthen digital literacy in our schools first. Then assess the evidence. If, after those measures have been properly implemented, there still remains clear evidence that further restrictions are necessary, then this House can revisit the issue with far greater confidence and evidence. Because policy should begin with the least restrictive measure that has a realistic chance of succeeding, not the most restrictive one. Because, Mr. Speaker, digital literacy is much like learning how to swim. We do not keep children away from the water forever. We teach them how to swim safely, and we supervise them while they learn. We give them the skills to protect themselves for the rest of their lives. And technology should be no different, because digital literacy is a lifelong skill, and a ban teaches none of them. Mr. Speaker, to my final point, I am concerned about the unintended consequences of this motion. It excludes educational platforms and private messaging services, but today's digital world no longer fits into neat little boxes. Youth organizations, charities, young entrepreneurs, small Caymanian businesses increasingly rely on these platforms to connect with the next generation. These are not simply entertainment apps. They are part of modern day life. Mr. Speaker, if we're asking young people to spend less time online, then we also have a responsibility to create more opportunities for them offline. Otherwise, we are taking away something without offering anything in its place. And if our goal is truly to protect the young people, then let us address the roots of this problem. Invest in mental health services, expand counseling, strengthen digital literacy, support parents, create safe recreational environments. Those are investments that will benefit the young people, whether social media exists or not. Mr. Speaker, this motion uses a sledgehammer where a scalpel is needed. It is a broad solution to a very complex problem. In solving one issue, we risk creating several others. The only thing we can control is whether the next generation enters this digital world prepared or simply postponed. Mr. Speaker, I know which future I would vote for. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for West Bay North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in this Honourable House of Parliament to oppose the motion to limit social media access for children under the age of 16. I want to make it clear that my position does not come from believing that social media is perfect or without risk. I recognize the challenges that exist online, including cyberbullying, harmful content, privacy concerns, misinformation, and the effects that excessive use can have on young people's well-being. However, while these concerns are real, I believe that limiting access to social media for all children under the age of 16 is not the most effective solution. Instead, I believe we should focus on education, guidance, parental involvement, and ensuring that young people have the skills necessary to responsibly navigate the digital world. Mr. Speaker, I speak on this matter not only as a youth parliamentarian and aspiring politician, but also as a young person who has experienced the growth of technology firsthand. I received my first phone at the age of 7, which was a BlackBerry. So you can imagine how long ago that was. I began using social media at the age of 8. Like many young people today, I grew up with technology as a major part of everyday life. Through my experience, I've seen both positive and negative effects of social media. Social media allows young people to communicate, express creativity, access information, and build connections. It creates opportunities for learning, personal growth, and sharing ideas. However, these benefits come with responsibilities. Young people must understand the importance of protecting their privacy, communicating respectfully, and recognizing that their actions online have consequences. That is why I believe the answer is not to remove young people from social media, but to prepare them for it. The motion before this Honourable House has a positive intention. It seeks to protect children, and I believe everyone in this chamber shares that same goal. However, we must ask ourselves whether restricting access for every young person under 16 is the best approach. Every young person develops differently. Age alone does not determine maturity or responsibility. A responsible 15-year-old with proper guidance may use social media safely and productively, while another young person of the same age may require more support. Therefore, instead of applying one restriction to everyone, we should focus on empowering young people with the knowledge and guidance needed to make responsible decisions online. I also believe that young people should have a greater voice when creating policies that directly affect them. While I respect the government's responsibility to protect children, greater consultation with the youth would have strengthened this proposal. Young people are not simply the subject of this discussion. We are active participants in it. Protecting young people should not only be something done for us, it should also be something done with us. We must also recognize that social media is not going away. Technology will continue to be part of education, employment, and everyday life. Digital skills will be necessary for our generation. If we want young people to succeed, we must teach them how to responsibly use technology rather than simply delay their access to it. Parents and guardians also have a very important role to play. While the government has a responsibility to protect young people, parents and guardians understand their children's maturity levels and circumstances better than anyone else. The first place where children learn responsibility is in the home. Parents should have conversations with their children about online safety, privacy, respectful communication, and maintaining balance between online and offline life. We must also consider the challenges of enforcing this restriction. How will social media platforms verify age while protecting privacy? How do we prevent young people from creating hidden accounts and accessing these platforms without guidance? A restriction may limit access, but it does not necessarily teach responsibility. Instead, we should focus on making social media safer through stronger parental controls, improved safety features, digital literacy programs, and awareness of online risks. As young people, we understand social media because we have grown up with it. We understand both its opportunities and its challenges. I am not standing here because I believe social media has no problems. It does. I am standing here because I believe young people deserve the opportunity to participate in the digital world with proper guidance and support. The goal should not be to prevent young people from entering the digital world. The goal should be to ensure they enter it prepared, responsible, and informed. For these reasons, I oppose this motion. May God continue to bless our young people, all Caymanians, residents, and our beloved Cayman Islands always. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Good morning, fellow youth parliamentarians, audience members, and honorable members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to this motion. At first glance, this proposal appears both reasonable and well-intentioned. It speaks of protecting young people. It acknowledges concerns surrounding mental health, online safety, and digital well-being. This parliament asks us to believe that limiting access to social media until the age of 16 is a proportionate response to online risks. I respectfully disagree. A proportionate response is one that addresses the source of a problem while limiting individual freedoms only as far as necessary. This motion does the opposite. It limits opportunities for every young person under 16 while leaving many sources of online harm untouched. Mr. Speaker, this motion repeatedly distinguishes social media from educational platforms, as though the two can be neatly separated. But who decides what is educational? Modern education extends far beyond the classroom. Students use social media to follow universities, academic organizations, scholarship programs, and youth initiatives. School clubs advertise events online. As students, we are constantly encouraged to become active, informed, and globally engaged citizens. Yet this motion would restrict access to one of the primary ways through which many young people access those opportunities. I therefore ask this House, are we preparing young people for the digital world, or are we simply postponing their entry into it? I fully acknowledge that the Parliament expressly recognizes the positive role of digital technologies in education, creativity, communication, and economic participation, and that this motion seeks to only delay and not permanently deny young people's access to social media. However, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the Parliament underestimates the importance of when opportunities arise. Allow me to share a real example. A close friend of mine is an exceptionally talented artist. At just 15 years old, she created an Instagram page to showcase her artwork. That page became far more than just a social media account. It became her professional portfolio. Through it, she was discovered by an American manga writer, invited to audition for the position of lead artist on his project, and ultimately earned that role through her hard work and her talent. Mr. Speaker, this story is not simply about a young artist. It demonstrates how social media has evolved beyond a platform for entertainment. The Parliament may argue that this motion seeks to only delay access until 16. Respectfully, I believe that that overlooks a very important reality. Opportunities are oftentimes sensitive. The connections made at 15, the experience gained at 14, and the portfolio built at 13 all contribute to a young person's development. These are not years that can be simply put on hold and then reclaimed later. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, we are not solving a problem, we are merely postponing it. In fact, Mr. Speaker, one of the strongest arguments against this motion came from its own supporters. Honorable Michael reminded this House that we cannot legislate good or bad parenting. Minister Anglin echoed that statement, warning that if parents don't support this, what we're doing will be for naught. And I agree. If legislation cannot replace parenting, and several members who spoke accepted that it cannot, then our focus should be on strengthening parents, schools, and digital literacy programs, while encouraging responsible, supervised online engagement, rather than relying primarily on a legal restriction that even its supporters acknowledge cannot succeed on its own. I welcome the Parliament's commitment to digital literacy. Education is essential, but digital literacy alone cannot replicate the judgment developed through responsible, supervised engagement with the online world. We do not teach someone to swim by keeping them out of water until a particular birthday. Finally, Mr. Speaker, through social media, many people learn about elections, scientific discoveries, environmental issues, international conflicts, and social movements. They are exposed to cultures, experiences, perspectives that they may never encounter within the boundaries of their own communities. Mr. Speaker, the Parliament has presented this House with a vision of social media that belongs to the past. My generation lives in the present. Social media is no longer simply where we socialize. It is where we learn. It is where we create. It is where we discover opportunities. And it is where many of us begin building the futures that we one day hope to achieve. Let us not mistake restriction for preparation. Let us instead prepare young Caymanians to thrive in the digital world that they already call home. I therefore urge this honorable House to reject this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for West Bay Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Instagram, TikTok, for those who are a bit older like me who started off with Facebook. Social media for practically all YPs in this room. I don't think any of us can recall a time in our lives where we had zero technological interaction. Or even if we did, we barely survived it being grounded for a week, no phones, nothing, right? Whether we use social media to communicate with friends, share milestones, learn new skills, or stay informed about current events, social media has proven itself as a critical member of society that is not going anywhere. Mr. Speaker, at the start of April 2026, there are 5.79 million social media identities. And social media continues to grow rapidly with a reported 294 million new identities starting social media at this time last year. For today's young people, social media is more than just a form of entertainment, but it has quickly become the main medium of socialization, learning, and self-expression. And Mr. Speaker, the motion before us today seeks to solve a rising problem affecting our youth today, mental health. The motion explicitly states, be it therefore resolved that the government considers the introduction of legislation to prohibit access to social media platforms by persons under the age of 16 years within the Cayman Islands as a child protection and public health measure. The motion is therefore not framed as a restriction on freedom or expression, but as a safeguard intended to protect children from potential harm. That is a lens in which I intend to approach this debate. However, Mr. Speaker, it is precisely here that I find myself grappling with a central tension. How do we meaningfully balance the acknowledged risk associated with social media and the undeniable role it plays in the daily lives, identity formation, and social development of young people? Mr. Speaker, the question before us is not whether social media has risks or is dangerous. We all know the effects that social media has, but the question that we are really answering in this motion is the effectiveness of the solution being proposed. I acknowledge the negative effects, but I believe the approach must be changed. And Mr. Speaker, I knew that most persons were going to go ahead and do research, and I thought, what better way to approach this debate than to actually hear from what the people who will be affected by this motion have to say. So I therefore prepared a 6 to 8 question survey that I sent out to, using social media, I sent out to all of my followers, and then I asked my brother, who is 14, to send to his friends as well, so I could actually hear what those teenagers have to say. Now, 44.2% of the respondents are 13 to 15 years old. This is just to kind of give an idea. 27.9% are 16 to 18-year-olds, and 21.2% 19 to 24, and the rest being 35 to 44 up there. But most of the respondents are young people, with 90% of them being students. And I asked a question before today, were you aware of the proposed restriction, the proposal to restrict social media for persons under 16? 69.2% people said yes, 30.8% said no. Do you support the legislation that would prohibit access to social media platforms for persons under the age of 16? An overwhelming 67% said no, and 33% said yes. And I asked, what potential benefits do you believe this legislation could have? And the top 5 responses on the benefits, they believe that it could, 59% believes that it would reduce exposure to harmful content. 52% believe that it would reduce cyberbullying. 47% believe it would improve mental health. 43% believes that it would increase face-to-face social interaction, and 34% believe that it will better sleep. But right below that, we have 32% who believe there will be no significant benefit in this proposal. And I asked, which concerns do you have about this proposal? The top concern, 61% of respondents said that they think children will find ways around it. Mr. Speaker, this can be supported. I also researched the benefits or the effects of the ban that is happening in Australia right now. And according to a study that was done by the BMJ, it is said that the ban had little immediate effect on overall social media use, because this has been, at the time of study, it was only 3 months of data that they have, so it's not very conclusive. And they did say that the policy hasn't failed forever, but it was a short study time. Young people easily bypassed these restrictions. They created fake accounts. Using private or incognito browsers, they simply entered a false birth date. Platforms' age verification were inconsistent. Some reductions occurred, but they were modest, with daily social media use reducing from 78% to 69%, and time spent online also declined slightly. But more than 85% of under 16s were still using social media. I also asked a question. If you had a chance to speak to the politicians voting on this matter, what would you like to say? And these are specific word-to-word responses from the respondents. Someone who is in the age group 16 to 18 years old said, "No matter your points, people always find ways around it. Consider things like VPN, the child using an adult's device, or hacks to disable restrictions. Although you may not have punishments, consider what would have to be done to enforce order if things get out of hand." A 19 to 24-year-old said, "Banning them won't stop them. It would just find ways. We just need to find ways to better guide them." A 25 to 34-year-old said, "I see firsthand the impact social media has on young people's mental health, self-esteem, behavior, and learning. Many of the safeguarding issues we deal with, including cyberbullying, anxiety, and online conflict, begin or escalate on social media. Delaying access until the age of 16 would help protect children's well-being while giving them more time to develop the maturity and resilience needed to use these platforms wisely." And there's one thing that I would like, there was a specific response that was really, really good. I might not be able to find it right now, but I can provide it to the actual MPs so that you can use this when deliberating on how to actually go forward with this. Someone said it's not a perfect solution, as it would be incredibly difficult to enforce, so most teenagers might get past it, but it's better than doing nothing. So, Mr. Speaker, while we are debating this motion, I ask that the
Apologies,
YPs...
elected member, your time is up.
May I just get 10 more seconds to wrap up? Yeah. I ask that we look at the motion. We speak to the motion and not to the topic of banning social media. Because there have been different things, like we're saying, we want to implement educational platforms, and that is a point that's constantly being raised. So please, try to speak to the motion and not to the topic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me bring this honorable house back to a simpler time. Saturday mornings, watching cartoons on the couch. You turn on your TV and you see the Jetsons, an animated show about the future. We see buildings in the sky, flying cars, and robot maids. Watching that pioneering technology on screen might have seemed far-fetched, but a future where the exploitation of young minds online is a severe risk no one wants to talk about. But today, I am going to talk about it. Mr. Speaker, I have to endorse and advocate for this motion. This motion is not about taking technology away from our young people. It is about one simple question: where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line between innovation and responsibility? Where do we draw the line between convenience and child protection? And most importantly, I ask, Where do we draw the line where our children's safety is at risk? Mr. Speaker, we live in a world where children can use iPads and smartphones before they can read and write. They're growing up online before they're ready to understand the dangers that exist there. Research continues to demonstrate why this is concerning. A recent Australian study found that adolescents who spent more than 2 hours per day on social media had a 29% higher risk of experiencing high depressive symptoms and a 17% higher risk of poorer well-being. The greatest risks were found among children aged 12 and 13, precisely the age this age group this motion seeks to protect. These are not just numbers. These are our sons, our daughters, our younger brothers and younger sisters. Mr. Speaker, let us look at Twitch. A child can download the application and within seconds watch live streams that might involve drug use, intoxication, profanity, and sexually suggestive material. The platform may display an age warning, but if a child simply logs out and clicks start watching, that warning can often be bypassed. So I ask this honorable House, where do we draw the line? Should a child's safety depend on whether they decide to click one button? Mr. Speaker, let us look at Snapchat. Snapchat's disappearing messages are one of its most popular features. For many people, they are harmless. But for those seeking to exploit children, disappearing messages can make harmful conversations far more difficult to detect and to investigate. Predators thrive in environments where evidence disappears. Again, I ask, where do we draw the line? How many risks are we willing to accept before we say enough is enough? Mr. Speaker, X, formerly known as Twitter, users can encounter pornography, graphic violence, and raw footages from hostilities. Yes, there's often a warning, but all it takes is clicking the word show, and the graphic content immediately appears. One click. That is all that separates a child from disturbing material that even many adults would struggle to process. Again, where do we draw the line? Mr. Speaker, cyberbullying is another reality we cannot ignore. Research from Australia's e-safety commissioner found that 53% of children aged 10 to 17 had experienced cyberbullying at some point in their lives, while 38% experienced it within the previous year alone. That means more than 1 in every 2 children has experienced online bullying. No parent would accept those numbers in a school, in a summer camp, or even at the playground, so why should we accept them online? Mr. Speaker, some may argue that parents should simply monitor their children's internet use. Parents absolutely have an important role to play, but we cannot place the entire burden on families while some of the largest technology companies in the world continue to profit from children's engagement. That is why this motion places responsibility where it belongs, on the platforms themselves, not on children, not on the parents alone, but on the companies with the resources and technology to implement meaningful age verification and stronger protections. That is precisely why this motion is drafted the way it is. It does not seek to punish children. It does not criminalize young people. Instead, it requires platform operators to take responsibility for compliance. Mr. Speaker, we already recognize that children require protection in many areas of life. We have restrictions on alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, driving. These laws do not exist because we don't like to do these activities. They exist because we understand that childhood is a period of development, and some risks should wait until greater maturity. Why should the digital world be any different? Mr. Speaker, this motion does not reject technology. In fact, it expressly recognizes the value of digital communication, education, and innovation. It excludes educational platforms, private messaging services, and essential digital services. It also calls for digital literacy programs for parents and mental health support for young people. This is not an extreme proposal. It is a balanced one. It recognizes both the benefits of technology and the need for stronger safeguards. Mr. Speaker, I return to the question in which I began. Where do we draw the line? Do we draw it after another child is groomed online? After another teenager is cyberbullied? After another young person is exposed to pornography or graphic violence? Or do we draw that line today? I believe we draw the line where our children's safety begins. We draw the line by putting their well-being before corporate convenience. We draw the line by expecting technology companies to take full responsibility for the platforms they have created. And we draw the line by sending a clear message that the best interest of a child will always come first. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly support this motion, and I urge every honorable member of this House to pick up their number 2 pencils, draw the line, and band together in support of this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the motion that this honorable House should limit social media usage for children under the age of 16, where social media is defined as a digital service for social interaction and content sharing. But first, I must thank the previous speakers for bringing to light the beating heart of this motion. No, social media companies don't care. And no, they do not have our children's best interest at heart. But that is exactly why we must limit their influence. By failing to restrict social media, we transfer the burden from teams whose failure leaves the companies, whose main interest is profit, liable to litigation, and transfer that to moderation teams of social media, which have failed again and again. Countless studies show that exposure to social media from a young age worsens mental health for life. So I implore everyone in this House today to protect our children's well-being, our young people's well-being, and the Cayman Islands' future. Mr. Speaker, children are the Cayman Islands' most valuable resource. They are the future, and it is our responsibility to nurture and protect them. However, every day, we allow thousands of teenagers to hand over hours of their lives to algorithms specifically designed to keep them addicted at the expense of their mental and physical health. Algorithms which do not exist to educate them, to improve their well-being, or to help them succeed, but to maximize profit. According to the American Psychological Association, in 2024, teenagers spent an average of 4.8 hours a day on social media, a significant increase when compared to years past. A fifth of the day wasted on the consumption of content, which not only fails to meaningfully improve the lives of those who consume it, but actively worsens them through the commodification of insecurity and ignorance through comparison and the spread of misinformation. Content which is spoon-fed to children, I repeat, by an algorithm which prioritizes user retention over user well-being. The prolonged exposure to this kind of content has already begun to influence everyone. Most of all, impressionable teenagers. Increasing rates of mental illnesses such as depression overlap with increasing rates of the usage of social media. This, alongside social media users self-reporting significantly higher rates of depression than the general population, has led many experts to believe that social media has a negative effect on mental health. An effect which is compounded by the developing brains of teenagers. Mr. Speaker, the evidence is clear, so why should the Cayman Islands allow the mental health of their youth to suffer? A reasonable question to ask would be, if social media is so harmful, why would teenagers willingly spend so much time using it? The answer is the addictive nature of social media. Most every social media platform spends billions of dollars a year honing their algorithms, hiring the best and brightest minds in every field to capture your attention for as long as possible. Social media make a profit through matching advertisers with people who fit their target advertisement. Therefore, social media has a vested interest in ensuring that their users spend as much time on their platforms as possible. In other words, you are not the customer, you are the product. And that's often accomplished through the promoting of controversial and polarizing content. And this type of content maximizes user retention. Algorithms favor it, which often means hateful, provocative, and manipulative content is shown to millions of people, many of which are young, impressionable teenagers. Social media platforms have a responsibility to moderate their content, yes. However, it is a responsibility which is overlooked far too often, which can expose developing minds to hateful ideologies, violence, and inappropriate content. This is not a hypothetical. This has happened before. And as surely as the sun will rise tomorrow, and again, it will happen again. On December 22nd, 2022, TikTok, one of the most widely used social media, especially among the young, experienced a massive moderation oversight, which led to the platform being flooded with explicit content. Opponents of the motion may argue that the limitation of social media limits the ability of those under 15 to socially interact and develop relationships in our increasingly digital age. However, I must argue that the moot would have the opposite impact. The third be it further resolved clause, located on the second page, makes a provision that messaging services used primarily for private conversation, such as WhatsApp or Signal, would be unaffected. Therefore, children of any age can socialize online. They can organize meetings, they can go to the beach, and they can go to the movies with their friends. They can form study groups, but they cannot spend hours mindlessly scrolling precise constructed mousetraps, which are social media. And the difference between these mediums is as clear as day. One provides secure, isolated environments for children to communicate, whilst the other exposes them to every other person with an account. Mr. Speaker, this motion is not about denying our young people technology. It is about ensuring that they can encounter it at an age at which they can use it responsibly, which is why I implore everyone in this House today to rise in support of this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for West Bay West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen of the gallery. I rise today in cautious support of this motion, and I want to be transparent about what that means. The intention behind this motion is right. Children should not be raised by an algorithm designed to hold their attention at any cost. But a motion with correct intentions is not the same as a motion with correct execution. And this House owes it to young people to look past the good intentions and ask whether this motion would actually work. As my fellow members of Parliament have mentioned, there are several key points that this motion overlooks. First, the lack of accountability. No one, not parents, not youth, not the social media companies, have a reason to comply. This motion asks platforms to verify age and be held responsible, but names no penalty structure if they do not. Meanwhile, what incentive does a 14-year-old in Cayman have to follow an age rule set by us? None. And what incentive does a $100 billion company in California have to build special compliance infrastructure for our jurisdiction of just 70,000 people? Also none. Without any reason to obey, this motion is simply a suggestion, a framework with no consequences for any of the three parties in the room that actually happens when harm is done. This motion looks decisive on paper, but may change nothing in practice. Second, the age threshold is arbitrary, and it creates a cliff, not a curve. So, say we agree on age 16, as set in the motion. That means a young person spends their entire childhood with zero exposure to social media, and then on one birthday gains access to all of it, including strangers and unmoderated content with no practice or preparation. And honorable members, furthermore, we must be honest about where cutting off for those years is opportunity. Young people today build entire careers on these platforms. As designers, editors, entrepreneurs, they build an audience. They learn to write, they learn to communicate across cultures and pitch ideas in 15 seconds, skills you can't learn in a traditional classroom. A blanket ban would delay this exposure to opportunity at precisely the age when other young people in other jurisdictions are building digital fluency and portfolios that give them a head start. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, there is no digital literacy provision for children themselves. The motion mentions literacy programs for parents. It says nothing about equipping young people before or after that age threshold with the actual skills they need to navigate these spaces critically. This motion proposes to keep children away from the internet instead of preparing them for it, and those are not the same policy. As for the idea that it's solely the parents' responsibility to equip their children with the skills needed for digital literacy, how are parents supposed to compete with the addictive nature of social media and $100 billion companies when they themselves may not have the skills or time to guide their children? When we have seen both parents, both intentionally and accidentally, neglect their responsibilities to educate their children on digital literacy. Furthermore, this motion cannot tell us what it actually bans. Is gaming platforms with in-game chat and social features caught by this? Is YouTube, used constantly for tutorials, homework help, and legitimate educational content, a social media platform or an educational one? This motion excludes educational platform but never defines a line, and these companies have spent a decade deliberately blurring exactly that line for this purpose. Finally, there is no alternative to offer. If we're removing something, whatever its harm may be, it's also a space where young people learn to socialize and build community. What replaces it? The motion is silent. Removal without replacement doesn't reduce the need social media fills. It just leaves that need unmet. And yet, despite the several aspects that this motion has overlooked, I understand and I implore you all to understand the absolute necessity of this motion. Right now, tonight, there are young people in this jurisdiction being groomed by strangers in their direct messages, exposed to violent content on an algorithm decided that would keep them scrolling, and torn apart by cyberbullying with no adult and no systems watching. That harm does not pause while we debate definitions. And as the eldest member of this youth parliament, I would like to emphasize that there are certain dangers and inappropriate activity that youth are exposed to that they cannot recognize has done them harm until years later. So, honorable members, my position is this. The principle is right, but the motion as drafted is an outline as a law, not a law. We owe it to our young people to create a safe environment for them, and I believe this motion is the direction we need to create that safety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to contribute to this important debate concerning the safety and well-being of our young people. At the outset, I wish to commend the honorable member for bringing this motion before the House. And as I heard the deliberations thus far, I stand on the shoulders of my fellow members. And I invite us to take and have a little interstellar moment, a little blast to the past, shall we? How many members of this honorable House remember what childhood used to look like? A Saturday morning, at least I know for me, wasn't spent scrolling. It was spent outside. Riding bicycles until the street lights come on. Building makeshift forts with the pillows in our living room. Climbing trees, for some of us, not me, that we probably should not have been climbing, and playing football until someone shouted that dinner was ready. And if you grew up like me, perhaps you were making grass soup or mud pies with your friends. I don't know about you, but I was doing that one. Convinced you had become a world-class chef. Now, these memories are funny, yes, but they also remind me, and hopefully us, of something profound. Childhood once happened primarily in the real world. I rise today in support of the idea of this motion, but more importantly, in support of the next generation of children who, like the examples I mentioned, should grow up with a rich childhood.
As we take the time to reminisce on what was, let me make something abundantly clear. I'm not suggesting that we should return to those days, nor am I believing that technology is our enemy. The truth is that every generation inherits a different world, a different struggle, a different culture, and a different reality. Mr. Speaker, today's children are no less creative. They're no less intelligent, no less able to make those mud pies that I spoke of. They just have simply inherited a childhood that exists both in the physical world and in the digital one. The question before this honorable House is therefore not whether technology belongs in our children's lives. It does. The question therefore is whether we have a responsibility to ensure that the content being seen by our children, or rather that technology serves childhood rather than childhood serving technology. Now, around the world, we are witnessing rising concerns surrounding cyberbullying, online exploitation, harmful content, and the effects of excessive social media use and what it can have on our young people's mental health. And as my fellow members labored on before me, we cannot ignore those realities. We have a responsibility, not simply to acknowledge the problem, but to respond to it thoughtfully. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, we are not writing on a blank page. Other countries, as labored again by my fellow members, Australia, the UK, they have decided that yes, enough is enough. We must take substantial action to improve the social space for our young children. But at the same time, as said by the elected member, Australia, in their implementation, it has not proved effective thus far. However, I do commend the ambition taken to make strides to come up with a tangible solution. But instead, we can learn from Australia. They prove that the implementation of such a notion requires careful implementation, ongoing oversight, and cooperation with technology companies. For example, again in the UK, they have taken a different approach, strengthening online safety through legislation while undertaking extensive consultation before considering broader restrictions, reminding us that meaningful reform requires listening to parents, teachers, experts, young people, and industry alike. If we are to legislate, let us legislate wisely. For me, the solution to the problem is not found in prohibiting access to social media. It is my belief that there should be limitation, yes, but not an outright ban. We should instead focus on establishing a modern child online safety framework built upon education, accountability, and proportionate regulation. The government should undertake multi-stakeholder consultation involving parents, educators, child psychologists, law enforcement, the Office of the Ombudsman, OFREG, technology experts, and importantly, the young people themselves. Implementation of this framework should occur through a phased commencement period, allowing schools, parents, and regulators time to prepare before enforcement begins. This should be accompanied by independent regulatory oversight and a statutory review so that Parliament can evaluate what is working and make improvements where necessary. Mr. Speaker, legislation alone will never protect our children. Good governance will. With that being said, I believe that we should catch the bucket before it spills instead of mopping up the mess after it has already been made. That is why I believe this framework must also include a mandatory social media safety SMS program delivered through our education system. Parents and children enrolled in government schools should receive annual digital safety workshops covering cyberbullying, online grooming, scams, artificial intelligence, parental controls, and responsible digital citizenship, with opportunities for participation by private schools and homeschooling communities. Children learn first and foremost from the adults around them. The government cannot replace parents, but it can empower them. Schools cannot supervise every moment a child spends online, but they can equip families with the knowledge to navigate the digital world safely. Mr. Speaker, truth is that we cannot recreate the childhoods we remember so fondly, nor should we try. But we can influence the childhoods of our children that our children will one day remember. We can choose whether those memories are shaped only by notifications or algorithms, or also by sunshine, conversation, laughter, and community. History rarely remembers the governments that waited for perfect solutions. It remembers those that recognized a changing world, learned from the experiences of others, and acted with wisdom. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I am in support of the idea of this motion. However, I believe that the solution to this problem is more than what meets the eye. If we legislate, we must carefully, consult widely, protect privacy, educate parents, and place children at the center of every decision we make. Then and only then do I believe that this motion has the potential to benefit not only the children growing up in the Cayman Islands today, but generations to come. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must admit, I came here today convinced and convicted. But now I'm very conflicted because I had a strong argument against this motion and my stance has now changed. Funny thing, Mr. Speaker, it's not the arguments in favor of this motion that led me to support it. It is instead the arguments against. We've argued with passion and conviction. Mr. Speaker, I think it's time we argue with facts. Though the title of this motion is controversial, the content is straightforward. The motion acknowledges the vulnerability of youth below the age of 16 and seeks to protect them from harmful materials by restricting certain social media platforms. Do we really want to argue with that? All right, let's argue. And in the interest of discussion, I invite anyone who wants to challenge me to get up. I will give way. First, Mr. Speaker, the global data from the US Surgeon General tells us that over 3 hours a day on these platforms doubles the risk of depression and anxiety. But your children aren't on it for 3 hours. Mr. Speaker, they're clocked in for nearly 5. We aren't looking at a harmless social network. We're looking at a factual line for youth anxiety, and our children under 16 are working double shifts. Second, Mr. Speaker, let's look at neuroscience, because the data here is terrifying. A landmark study by JAMA Pediatrics didn't just ask kids how they felt, they scanned their brains. The data proved that habitual scrolling physically alters the structural development of a young adolescent's brain. It forces the brain's social reward centers into constant, exhausting overdrive. Mr. Speaker, we're allowing a $1 trillion algorithm to play puppet master with a 13-year-old's neurological wiring before they even have the biological defense systems to fight back. It's like putting a toddler behind the wheel of a fighter jet and expecting them not to crash. And finally, Mr. Speaker, let's look at the data on basic survival, sleep. Comprehensive development meta-analysis show that an absolute unbroken link between algorithmic late-night notifications and the global epidemic of chronic youth sleep deprivation. We're allowing technology to systematically rob our children of the exact hours their brains require to heal, to grow, and to process reality. We can argue with each other all we want, but let's not fool ourselves. We cannot argue with science. The facts are clear, and the decision we must make today is also clear. Our experience means nothing if we do not apply facts. But before I end, Mr. Speaker, I would like to clear up the misconceptions that led me to change my stance. Misconception 1, Mr. Speaker, came from the question of what makes a child age 16 more mature than any other child 2 years younger. The answer is simple, Mr. Speaker: science. And this science has a name. It's called the maturity gap by Steinberg et al. This study proved an indistinguishable difference between those under and above age 16. It's studies like these that led to the age of consent, which I sure do hope no one in this House intends to remove. Mr. Speaker, misconception 2 came from the idea that social media is here to stay. That proves absolutely nothing. Cars are here to stay, and I don't see anyone advocating for 8-year-olds to drive. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, no one should. Misconception number 3, Mr. Speaker, is with the youth disagreeing with the motion. That is simply not enough reason to disregard it. Furthermore, it completely ignores the addictive nature of social media. Imagine asking alcoholics if we should ban alcohol. How much sense would that make? Maybe similar restrictions have failed in other nations, but since when is a challenge being hard to solve reason enough to ignore it? Can we not be better because our children deserve better? Let us look past our youthful filters. We're not just speaking on behalf of youth. We're speaking on behalf of competence, on behalf of facts, and on behalf of historical evidence. I am in full support of restrictions against social media. And while I have the platform, let me also advocate for even more. Let us go further and assess the poisonous food that are allowed onto our islands and onto the plates of our children. This is our chance to be heard. Let us be fair, let us be honest and decisive, deciding now where we draw the line. With social media, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Red Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this motion of the principle because I believe it is right to protect children from the harms of social media. However, I do not fully support the current form of the motion because I believe it still needs work to be realistic, balanced, and effective for the youth in Cayman. As a child that has used social media throughout everyday life, I can say with certainty that social media is not entirely bad. It can help youth learn, stay connected, build skills, and even develop creativity or business ideas. But the fact that it has benefits does not mean it should be left unchecked. We also have to be honest about the damage it can cause, especially to children whose minds are still developing. The problem is not simply that youth people use social media. The problem is that these platforms are designed to keep them hooked. They are built around endless scrolling, constant notifications, and algorithms that push content in a way that can be harmful to children and for them to not resist. That can lead to time being wasted, lower concentration, poor sleep, anxiety, and unhealthy comparisons. According to UNICEF's global reports on children and digital technology, heavy and unregulated social media use is linked to higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depressive symptoms among adolescents. UNICEF also notes that excessive use, particularly late at night, can interfere with sleep, school performances, and emotional well-being of youth. Younger teenagers are also more vulnerable to cyberbullying, harmful content, and unhealthy social comparison. Other experts have reached similar conclusions. A major study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that teenagers who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have significantly more likely to report depression and anxiety. The World Health Organization has also warned that excessive screen time is associated with stress, sleep problems, and difficulty concentrating. Sleep research also reinforces this. Studies have found that social media usage before bed delays sleep, reduces total sleep time, and leads to poor school performance again. When teenagers stay up scrolling, they're often sacrificing the rest, focus, and emotional stability they need for the next day. That is why I believe children under 14 should receive the strongest protection. At that age, they're still developing emotionally and mentally, and they need more guidance and less exposure to harmful online spaces. UNICEF explains that younger adolescents are less able to judge what is safe, resist pressure, or manage their time when faced with highly engaging platforms. Development psychiatrists also agree. They describe ages 13 and 14 as a period where impulse control is still developing and sensitivity to peer approval is especially high. By the age of 16, many teenagers show how self-control regulation are better able to think ahead and understand consequences. That does not mean social media suddenly becomes safe, but it does mean older teenagers are generally better equipped to manage it responsibly. So while both 14 and 16-year-olds are still children, the level of judgment and self-management is different. I do not think a complete ban up to the age of 16 is the best answer. But for younger children, the risks are simply too high to ignore, so we limit and we supervise them. This is not about punishing young children or taking away technology. Educational platforms should remain available, again, as stated in the motion, and messaging apps used for school and family communication will also remain available. A child using the internet to learn is very different from a child being pulled into an endless feed designed to keep them scrolling for hours. We also need to be clear about the kind of platforms we are talking about. YouTube and Netflix can still have a place as limited entertainment, especially with parental supervision. But platforms like TikTok and Instagram are built around infinite scrolling, autoplay, and personalized recommendations that are designed to maximize engagement. These features make them far more addictive and much harder for younger children to manage. And that is why stronger restrictions on those platforms make sense. Schools can help by teaching cyber safety, online behavior, and the risk of overuse, but education alone will not solve this issue. A child may understand the lesson in class or campaigns being told to them and still spend hours scrolling at home with no care in the world of what was said. Education matters, but it must be backed by some real action. Therefore, parents also have a major and the most crucial role to play in this. They need to monitor usage, set limits, and actively guide what their children are doing online. The way children are raised and brought up on how to use social media will influence the way they use it by the age of 16 after limitation and by parental supervision. However, parents should not be expected to stand alone against the billion-dollar companies whose platforms are designed to capture attention and make profit slowly off of that. That is exactly why the government has the responsibility to step in, and the law should help set basic standards of protection, especially for younger teenagers who are least able to protect themselves. Consequently, in Cayman, this issue matters even more because children do not always have enough real-world alternatives to replace screen time. We have some places for entertainment, yes, but that's not entirely enough to support young children's engagement in healthy, active, or social ways. That is why we should not only talk about restrictions and limitations, but also think about building more youth spaces, sports facilities, recreational areas, and community activities in the motion, if the motion was to pass without more thought, like an arcade or a carnival. That would benefit Cayman in many more ways, more than just helping the children with their mental health, but also because Cayman strives off of tourism and finance. I want to be clear. This motion is not to an extreme extent. It does not silence children, stop them from learning, or take away all access to technology. It simply recognizes that children should not be exposed to unrestricted social media when the risks are so well established. That is a reasonable position, not a radical one. This is why I support the spirit of the motion. I agree with the aim of protecting children, promoting healthier habits, and making platforms more accountable. But I also believe the motion still needs refining to ensure it's fair, practical, and properly targeted to this youth. Mr. Speaker, social media should not be the thing raising our children. Parents should do that. Schools should support that. And the law should help protect that. But for those reasons, I support this motion in principle while recognizing that it still needs work to be fully effective. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Cayman, West and Little Cayman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today, and I want to be clear. I rise with the greatest respect for the honorable mover who has brought this motion before us. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition. And now I know what some of my friends on the government benches are probably thinking right now. What's wrong with this boy? He eat too much turtle meat or what? But, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you the turtle meat was perfectly fine. It is this motion that gives me indigestion. Mr. Speaker, I represent Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman. Beautiful islands, gorgeous people. And when I go home to Cayman Brac, I see children, real Caymanian children, children who use the internet to learn, children who use social media to stay connected to cousins in Grand Cayman, to grandparents in Jamaica, to scholarship opportunities in the United States. So, Mr. Speaker, we're a small island, and social media is not a luxury for our children. It is sometimes the only window they have to the wider world. The honorable mover means well, but good intentions are not always good law. So, Mr. Speaker, I give props to the honorable mover. She obviously cares about the children, and we all do. But, Mr. Speaker, a Caymanian saying says, slow cook the crab or it turn out tough. This motion is trying to rush a solution, and if we boil ourselves alive trying to fix the problem, the children still don't get better. And, Mr. Speaker, the evidence is right there. A survey of over 17,000 young Australians. Look at that. Australia, the very country cited as the model for this motion, found that 75% said they did not plan to stop using social media once the restriction came into place. Only 25% said yes. Mr. Speaker, the honorable mover has brought us a motion with a 25% success rate. Come on, now I've seen better odds at a fish fry raffle. Age verification systems are bypassed by young people within days, sometimes within hours. Mr. Speaker, there is a 12-year-old somewhere in Grand Cayman who was already found a workaround, shared it in a group chat, and gone back to doing her homework. So we are placing the burden on the wrong shoulders. And, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, TikTok does not have an office on Cardinal Avenue. Meta does not pay business license fees in Georgetown. So sending a regulatory notice from Georgetown to Meta headquarters in Menlo Park, California is like sending a strongly worded letter to a hurricane. You feel better, right, Nick? The hurricane's still coming. Mr. Speaker, the data is real and it tells us a restriction alone will fail. But, Mr. Speaker, I do not oppose this motion out of ignorance of the data. I oppose it because I have read the data carefully. And what it shows is not a case for restriction. It is a cry for investment. So let me begin here, right at home, from the National Drug Council's Student Drug Use Survey, CISD-US 2024. More than 1 in 10 students reported depression and anxiety, higher than the global average. A quarter in years 6 to 12 considered suicide, and a quarter had self-harm. Those young people already use platforms with a minimum age of 13, yet the harm still grew. So, Mr. Speaker, we need better support, not tighter restrictions. And at Alex Place, our adolescent mental health hub at Anthony S. Eden Hospital, the need is clear. In 2023, they supported 148 young people. In 2024, that rose to 269, so an increase of 82% in 1 year. Adolescent inpatient admissions rose from 7 in 2021 to 36 in 2024, and outpatient demand increased 50% over the same time period. And by mid-2024, the Ministry of Youth reported 37 attempted suicides or overdoses among young people aged 10 to 20. Mr. Speaker, 10 years old to 20 years old. In just 3 years, Mr. Speaker, 37 in a country of 85,000. Mr. Speaker, if that number does not land, let me say it a little bit differently. That is 1 attempted suicide by a child every 5 weeks. And when this House answer to that is to restrict TikTok, I say with the greatest of respect, we have misread the room, or much less we have misread the even hospital. Health Minister Ebanks Wilkes said young people spoke about loneliness, pressure, bullying, and feeling unseen. And the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce called for a comprehensive community-based approach, integrating schools, families, and healthcare providers, not a platform restriction. The Chamber said strengthening early interventions, increasing funding, and promoting public awareness will guide our youth toward a mentally healthy future. And, Mr. Speaker, there's a legal problem that this motion has not mentioned. The Cayman Islands Data Protection Act. Age verification, the backbone of any social media restriction, requires platforms to collect biometric data, identification documents, or even behavioral analysis from children. So our own DPA, which came into force in 2019. So let me get this straight. To protect children from social media, we're going to collect their biometric data and hand it to the very platforms we are trying to regulate. Mr. Speaker, come on now. I've heard of fighting fire with fire, but this is fighting fire with a flamethrower. Pew researchers surveying teenagers themselves found that 75% say social media is not the biggest threat in their lives. So if our own young people are telling us the picture is more complicated and this House is not listening, then I have to ask, is this a youth parliament or is this a parliament about the youth that forgot to ask them? Mr. Speaker, I am the child you are trying to protect. Now, Mr. Speaker, I myself am 15 years old, and I say this with the greatest of respect. Isn't it a little ironic that I am standing here in this honorable youth parliament elected to represent Kimmerbrook West and Little Cayman, making a legal argument before Mr. Speaker and this honorable House? And if this motion passes, I would not even be allowed to post about it on TikTok without limits or regulations. Come on, Mr. Speaker, that cannot be right. Conclusion without conviction. Mr. Speaker, they are not the problem. The absence of guidance is the problem. Restrict the harm, not the child. What we can do is educate. What we can do is empower parents. And what we absolutely should not do is pass a legislation that sounds strong but enforces like wet paper. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say this one time and one time final. Disagreement is not disloyalty. It is democracy. Therefore, I vote against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Georgetown North.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today not to oppose the heart of this motion, but to challenge the method it proposes. With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, I commend the intention originally brought to this House by the Honorable Deputy Speaker. However, I challenge and say that this misconstrued delivery and conflicting wording is not the answer. Because the truth is, the harms are real. And as young people, we do not need these harms explained to us from a distance or presented in a manner of political poise. We have lived close enough to them to recognize them immediately. So let me begin with absolute clarity. I agree that the government has a duty to act. I agree that platforms should not be allowed to profit from harm. I agree that children deserve protection in a digital world designed too often for engagement and not for well-being. But Mr. Speaker, agreeing on the problem does not require us to agree on every wolf solution wrapped in sheep's clothing. This motion asks us to believe something very difficult to defend. But readiness does not arrive like a birthday card. Confidence, restraint, discernment, and resilience are not gifts that suddenly appear. They are built, they are taught, they are practiced. And that is why I say this motion, though well intended, does not create a pathway. It creates another bluff. We are told that at 16, that is a legal threshold for a total social media ban because young people below that age are too vulnerable, too impulsive, too neurologically unfinished to navigate these spaces safely. But Mr. Speaker, 16 is the age at which our laws already say a young person can consent to the most intimate act a human being can engage in. It is the age at which we say she can leave school and enter the workforce. It is the age at which the penal code says that she has enough judgment to make life-altering decisions about her own body. Yet this motion asks us to accept that this same young woman, trusted with her body, her labor, and her education, cannot be trusted with a TikTok account. Mr. Speaker, that is not a defense for children. That is contradiction dressed up as one. Mr. Speaker, that is not preparation, that is postponement. And postponed vulnerability is still vulnerability. That is the paradox at the center of this debate. Mr. Speaker, I am not making an argument for doing nothing. I am making an argument for doing something smarter. Because if the danger is real,
then the solution must also be real, not merely dramatic. And one of the biggest weaknesses in a blanket ban is not whether it sounds strong, but whether it will work. Even in the wider national debate on this issue, supporters of action themselves acknowledge something important. Law cannot replace parenting. Enforcement will be difficult, and young people will always find ways around weak barriers. That concern is not theoretical. We already know from other countries that when governments impose broad digital bans, many young people simply move to fake accounts, shared accounts, or other workarounds. Australia's under 16 ban has already faced criticism for limited compliance, weak age checks, and easy circumvention, with reporting showing that many teens remain on platforms despite the law. So we must ask honestly, if a ban is easily bypassed, what exactly have we achieved? Have we made our children safer, or have we simply made the risk less visible? Because a child with a secret account, a fake date of birth, and no trusted adult support is not more protected than a child with supervised access, clear guardrails, and the skills to recognize danger. That is why I believe this House must be careful not to confuse protection with prohibition. The real enemy is not simply access. The real enemy is unsafe design. It is the infinite scroll designed to keep children online longer than they are intended. It is the algorithm that studies insecurity and feeds it back as content. It is a public like count that turns self-worth into a scoreboard. It is the disappearing messages that removes evidence. It is direct message features that give strangers an opening into children's private space. So if these are the real harms, let us regulate the harm itself, not just the child. Mr. Speaker, if I oppose this method, then I must offer an alternative. So let me propose a distinctively Caymanian approach, not a wall before 16, but guardrails before 16, not a ban without preparation, but a framework for digital readiness. These platforms do not have our best interests at the forefront. However, our members of parliament must. If they are not, I invite our young Caymani to take a seat at the table of which you are regulated. If platforms want access to our young Caymanians, then for minors, there should be automatic restrictions on stranger messaging, public follower accounts, and geologic sharing, autoplay, and addictive recommendation systems. The burden should fall on the platform, not the children. There needs to be graduated access into total execution instead of total exclusion. A 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 15-year-old are not the same. Our law should reflect stages of development, not pretend every minor has identical needs and identical risks. Members of Parliament, I implore you to target the high-risk features first. If certain features are especially harmful, regulate them aggressively. If certain platforms repeatedly fail children, penalize them. If age assurance is needed in high-risk spaces, then require it there. Mr. Speaker, this is a youth parliament. That matters, because too often, policy about young people is written in a voice young people do not recognize. Adults speak of us, for us, around us, and over us. But today, our voices are in the room. And what I believe the youth of these islands are saying, do not offer us a slogan when we need a strategy. Do not offer us symbolism when we need safeguards. Do not offer us a wall when what we need is a bridge. Yes, protect us. Yes, regulate the corporations. Yes, confront the mental health crises. Yes, take on online harm seriously. But do not pretend that digital maturity can be delayed by law, because readiness is built, not switched on. So I stand with the mission behind this motion, but not with its method. I stand for protection without overreach. I stand for responsibility without illusion. I stand for a Caymanian solution that prepares young people for the world we actually live in, rather than one that simply tries to postpone that world. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say this in closing. Do not build a wall around our childhood. Build a bridge into our adulthood. Teach us, equip us, protect us, regulate the programs, empower our parents, and do not confuse banning with preparing, because the question before us is whether young people need protection. The question is whether Caymanian
Cayman will give us a headline or a strategy. I choose strategy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Cayman Brock East.
Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the honorable member who brought this motion forward. I truly understand the intentions behind it. Every member in this House today just wants to see the children of our islands grow up safe, healthy, and protected. However, Mr. Speaker, while having good intentions does not always mean that we have the right solution. Today, I stand firmly against the motion because banning social media for those under the age of 16 is not the answer. Mr. Speaker, we all know social media has its dangers. There are cyberbullying, harmful content, online predators, and unrealistic expectation placed on our young people. No one in this House is denying that. But by banning social media, it does not eliminate those same dangers. If a child does not know how to safely use the internet at the age of 16, what suddenly changes when they turn 17? Nothing. The problem is simply not just social media. It's the lack of education, supervision, and guidance. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest flaws in this motion is that it attempts to jump straight to the final step before it completes the many important phases that should come first. A ban should never be our first response. Before, we should consider restricting social media. We should be investing in digital literacy programs in our schools so that young people can know about online safety. We should also be creating more safe spaces for our youth, parks, sports centers, and community programs. Mr. Speaker, if we have not provided our youth with support, opportunities that they need, then banning social media is simply putting a Band-Aid on a much deeper issue. Mr. Speaker, we do not ban cars because accidents happen. Because if that was the case, our islands would be known worldwide as a place where you travel by foot. But instead, we teach people how to drive first. So why should social media be any different? Yes, we can regulate the Cayman Islands, but the world does not stop because we do. If we simply remove social media, we are not preparing our young people for the digital world. They will eventually enter it without the skills that they need. That, Mr. Speaker, is far more dangerous. Too often we hear about the negatives, but rarely do we recognize the incredible opportunities that social media has created for us. As someone born in the digital generation, I can confidently say that many of us present today have learned skills that previous generations before us had not had access to, thanks to social media. Through the media, students can join study groups, promote businesses, communicate with experts from across the world, and have access from new parts of them that they have never discovered. A student in Cayman Brac can learn Mandarin from an online friend in China. A young entrepreneur can invest in businesses without spending thousands of dollars. These opportunities are real. Mr. Speaker, coming from Cayman Brac, I know what it feels like to grow up on a small island where opportunities can sometimes feel limited. Many young people in Cayman Brac use social media more than just scrolling through videos. It is where we learn new skills, discover opportunities, and connect to people who share our passions, and realize that our dreams do not have to end where our 12-mile island does. Mr. Speaker, if we remove that connection without first creating more opportunities here at home, what are we leaving for our young people to do? Instead of taking away the few windows that they have to the real world, let us give them more reason to look away from the screen by investing in our communities. Mr. Speaker, with everything, there is a pro and a con. A knife can prepare food or cause harm. Medicine can cure or cause complication. So can the internet either educate or mislead. The difference is how we teach people to use it. If we remove these same opportunities for our young people, we are not protecting them. We are limiting their ability to compete in an increasingly digital world. Mr. Speaker, let us all ask ourselves in here today one simple question. How will this ban be enforced exactly? The internet does not stop at Cayman's borders. We still have access to VPNs, gaming platforms, private messaging platforms, shared devices, or older friends. History has shown us time and time again when something is banned without addressing the underlying issue, people simply find another way around it. Trust me, as a child, when your parent says not to do something, the more appealing it looks to do. Instead of creating responsible digital citizens with the help of education, we risk of encouraging secretive behavior. Mr. Speaker, this motion undermines the determination of breakneck children who want to have their way. Just as a toddler loves to act defiant to their parents' instructions, we will have thousands of grown toddlers acting defiant to this law. But unlike a toddler, they will receive a punishment for their actions. But Mr. Speaker, this motion clearly stated that no young person will be criminalized or penalized if they do not comply. So what is a lesson that we're trying to teach them? Mr. Speaker, because the world has changed, many young people now spend more time on their phones. For them, social media is not just entertainment, it is where they socialize with their friends and express themselves. If we take social media away without creating a safer alternative, what meaningful options are we offering them? Mr. Speaker, even if this motion were to be passed, would our children truly be safer? The answer is no. Many of the same risks that the supporters of this motion are quick to point out to can still happen on private messaging platforms. A child does not need social media to receive harmful messages and communicate with strangers. Mr. Speaker, let me point out to everyone in this honorable chamber right now that Meta is trying to implement WhatsApp usernames. So technically, WhatsApp should be next to go when the ban is put into place. Because in the description, it says, once you have a username, you do not need a phone number to talk to anyone. Does this not qualify as a social media platform? It has the same capabilities as one. You can post, you can mention, you can even message other people. How would we, the youth parliamentarians, send our jokes into our groups or wish Ms. Norja a happy birthday? We are not solving the problem. We are simply shifting it to another platform. The issue is not the app itself. It is how technology is being used. And that is why our focus should be on teaching our young people rather than blaming the ban, blaming the apps, and trying to eliminate the apps because of the quote-unquote risk. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I'm asking for 30 seconds extra.
You may have 30 seconds.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I believe every member in this House agrees on one thing. We want our children to be safe. But the point is, we differ on how we want to achieve it. The current parliament believes that banning social media will protect our young people. I disagree. I believe in education, parental involvement, and responsible digital citizenship to protect them far more effectively. Mr. Speaker, progress has never come from running away from new technology. Progress comes from learning how to responsibly use it. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I respectively urge this House to reject this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every Caribbean child knows this conversation. You tell your parents your head hurts. It's that phone. You're tired. It's that phone. You fail a test. It's that phone. But Mr. Speaker, while that may slide for Caribbean parenting, it does not make for good public policy. Unfortunately, that is exactly what this motion is asking us to do. Take a complex issue and disregard its nuance. When we look beyond the assumptions and examine the evidence, the motion begins to unravel. Mr. Speaker, the Parliament's case completely overestimates the link between social media and poor mental health. In support of this ban, the Parliament relied heavily on the US Surgeon General's report to assert assumptions between social media use and anxiety and depression. But after further exploration of these sources, I found that these very studies cited caution explicitly that it is difficult to establish causality, and it calls for further longitudinal research. Many also did not examine how young people were using social media, and acknowledge significant limitations. Mr. Speaker, if the researchers themselves cannot conclude a causal relationship between social media and poor mental health, the Parliament cannot credibly claim that banning it will deliver benefits significant enough to justify such a sweeping restriction. Correlation alone cannot tell us whether social media is the cause, whether vulnerable young people are simply more likely to use it, or how its impacts compares to other factors such as family circumstances, social pressures, friendship conflicts, academic pressure, and socioeconomic stress. What concerns me is that this proposal appears less like carefully considered policymaking and more like the adoption of an emerging international trend before its effectiveness is proven. These policies are still in their infancy globally, and we do not have clear evidence that they produce the long-term mental health outcomes the Parliament claims. Mr. Speaker, let us turn to what our young people have expressed. Local data consistently shows that poor mental health outcomes are strongly shaped by adverse child experiences, family instability, and stressful school environments, well-established indicators of depression and anxiety. Mr. Speaker, we don't need the data to tell us that. Ask our young people what they're struggling with: exam pressure, family conflict, friendships breaking down, financial worries at home, traumatic experiences, feeling like they don't belong. Can social media make some of those struggles worse? Absolutely. But the data and the Caymanians themselves shows that it is not a dominant or defining cause of poor mental health, and certainly not dominant enough to enforce a blanket ban on all under 16s. These, Mr. Speaker, are not peripheral influences, but direct, well-established drivers of poor mental health among teens in Cayman. The needs of our young people, shaped largely by the unique context, Caymanian context, cannot be forgotten in the face of global statistics. Mr. Speaker, if we are serious about improving youth mental health in Cayman, we should address the challenges that Caymanian young people themselves have identified. In 2022, a survey showed that over 30% of students had experienced a life-threatening event, and more than half had witnessed violence in or around school environments in the Cayman Islands. What has been done to mitigate that from continuing to occur and help those affected? A blanket social media ban does nothing to address these problems and risks diverting attention from targeted and experience-specific interventions. This youth parliament has already proposed a mental health initiative designed by our young people for our young people. What has the parliament done in response to that? Initiatives like those, in combination with strengthening safeguarding, violence prevention, family support, and parenting programs, can make a Cayman-specific approach to addressing youth mental health. That should be the first mode of action, Mr. Speaker, rather than accompanying the most extreme option. Even if this House were persuaded that the ban is the right policy, Mr. Speaker, the motion itself feels contradictory and lacks the ability to be meaningfully enforced. The Parliament has adopted an enforcement model that has already been evaded by an overwhelming majority across multiple jurisdictions. And yet, they're suggesting the same enforcement and expecting different results. If the Parliament truly believes that this policy is necessary, where's the effective enforcement? It's not enough to rely on the idea that the risk of legislation being evaded doesn't mean it shouldn't be passed. Let us be clear, Mr. Speaker. Legislation without realistic and strong enforcement is worth nothing more than chicken scratch. We cannot create a precedent where governments saying we did something is good governance. Mr. Speaker, perhaps the greatest contradiction in this proposal lies in who the Parliament is asking us to trust. They have characterized social media companies as profit-driven corporations who cannot be trusted to protect children. Yet, when it comes to enforcing this ban, they gave primary responsibility to those very same companies to conduct the needed regulation. To access social media, young people may be required to submit passports, driver's license, or even facial biometric data to age assurance assurance systems as to verify their age. And who ultimately gets this information? The same companies the Parliament has spent this debate telling us is untrustworthy. Mr. Speaker, if these corporations are still not making enough effort to make their platforms safe for children, after being outlawed for under 16s in several jurisdictions, why would they handle such sensitive personal information with care? The Parliament doesn't know where the data will be stored. They don't know who will access it, how long it will be retained, or how it may be used in the future. It may very well end up in the hands of the predators, which this motion seeks to prevent children from in the first place. If the only way this policy
Honorable Deputy Leader, your time is up.
May I request an extra minute?
Yes, you may
Thank
have
you.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the only way this policy works is by asking families to trust companies the Parliament itself has decided are untrustworthy, then the policy is fundamentally inconsistent. My final concern is that this motion removes a deeply personal decision from the people best placed to make it, the parents of Cayman. Every child is different. Some may be better off without social media because of its impacts on their mental health and focus, while others may benefit from the connection, creativity, learning, and community it provides. There is no single experience that applies to every young person, making a blanket ban difficult to justify. To the parents and families watching today, no government knows your child better than you do. You understand their strengths, their struggles, and what helps them to grow far more comprehensively than any politician. If you feel compelled that social media is harming your child, act on that. Set the boundaries.
Honorable Deputy Leader, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, I feel like this is a very important message that the parents of the Cayman Islands need to hear.
You may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you feel compelled that social media is harming your child, act on that. Set the boundaries, remove the access, and have those conversations. You do not need to wait for Parliament to tell you to protect your children. And equally, if you believe that your child can engage with social media responsibly under your guidance, that choice should remain yours. You should have just as much liberty to make the best choices for your children as parents who don't want their children on social media. Our role as legislators should be to support parents with education, resources, and safe environments, and not replace their judgment with a one-size-fits-all. Parents, I urge you to make the difficult decisions your child needs you to do. And to this House, let us empower parents, support them, and trust them to put their children first. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before we move on, we will not suspend the House for lunch. And instead, since we have 2 more speakers left, we will continue through it and just end. Thanks. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Northside.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my opinion on private member's motion number 3 of 2026 before this honorable youth parliament. At the outset, let me say that I understand and respect the intention behind this motion. It comes from a place of genuine concern for the safety, well-being, and development of the young people in the Cayman Islands. Social media can absolutely present real dangers, and those dangers should never be brushed aside. However, while I respect the purpose of this motion, I cannot support its approach for 3 main reasons. First, it is far too broad and disproportionate because it places a blanket restriction on all young people, regardless of their maturity, responsibility, or individual circumstances. Second, it would be extremely difficult to enforce. I would raise serious concerns about privacy and data protection. Third, there are far better solutions available, such as digital literacy, parental guidance, platform accountability, and mental health support, which tackle the real issue without shutting young people out of the digital world. Mr. Speaker, I do not deny that social media can be harmful. Cyberbullying, exploitation, harmful content, and addictive behavior are very real concerns. But recognizing a problem does not mean we should rush into the wrong solution. This motion asks us to believe that limiting access is the same as protecting children. I respectfully disagree. My first reason for opposing this motion is that it is too broad and disproportionate. It treats every child under 16 as though they are equally vulnerable and equally incapable of using social media responsibly. That is simply not the case. Young people are not all the same. Some are mature, disciplined, academically focused, and able to use digital platforms in positive and productive ways. A blanket restriction ignores those differences and paints every young person with the same brush. Social media is not just a place for entertainment and distraction. For many young people, it is a space for learning, creativity, communication, and participation. They use it to access educational content, follow current events, share ideas, build confidence, and connect with communities beyond their immediate surroundings. It can help them develop digital skills that are becoming very more important every single day. If we remove access entirely, we do not teach young people how to use social media wisely. We simply delay the challenge and leave them unprepared for the digital world they will inevitably enter. Protection should not mean isolation. We should be guiding young people, not locking them out. My second reason is that this motion is practical to enforce and creates serious privacy concerns. The motion places primary responsibility for compliance and age verification on social media platform operators. That may sound neat on paper, but in reality, it is far more complicated. How exactly will platforms verify age? Will they require government-issued identification? Will they collect personal documents? Will they store sensitive information about children? These are not small questions. They go straight to the heart of privacy and security. The more information platforms collect, the greater the risk if that information is leaked, hacked, or misused. And even with age verification systems in place, determined young people can still find ways around them. They can use false birthdays, borrowed accounts, or virtual private networks. So what happens then? The most determined users still get through, while responsible users are burdened by intrusive checks and unnecessary barriers. That means this motion may create the appearance of protection without actually solving the problem. My third reason for opposing this motion is that there are better alternatives available. If the real concern is the safety and well-being of the young people, then we should focus on solutions that are targeted, practical, and effective. We should strengthen digital literacy education in schools so that children learn how to recognize harmful content, spot unsafe behavior, and make smart choices online. We should equip parents with better tools and resources so they can supervise their children responsibly. We should encourage social media companies to improve safety features, moderation systems, and reporting tools. We should also expand access to mental health support for young people who are struggling. These measures address the root of the problem. They do not punish all young people for the few actions of a few. They do not cut children.
I recognize the elected member for West Bay Central.
Mr. Speaker, point of order, Mr. Leader of the House. At the third to last beat further resolved, the motion says, accompanying the legislation with public education initiatives, including digital literacy programs for parents and accessible mental health resources for young people. I feel like we've kind of lost sight of the motion, and we're debating banning social media and not debating the topics in the motion. So if I could ask a member to, it's not directly towards a member, it's like a collective thing. I've tried to hold it, but if the member could retract his statement
Elected member, could you retract your statement, please?
I retract my statement. Mr. Speaker, let us not confuse restriction with responsibility. A blanket ban may sound bold, but boldness is not the same as effectiveness. A policy is not good simply because it is strict. It is good only if it works, if it is fair, and if it truly serves the people it was meant to protect. For these reasons, I cannot support this motion. It is too broad, too difficult to enforce, and too limited in its thinking. We can add We can and should protect young people, but we must do so through education, support, accountability, and guidance, not through exclusion. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully express my opposition to this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin my speech, could I ask for 36 seconds extra, please?
I'll give you 30 seconds.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, drive. And no. I'm not telling you to drive out of this house. I'm not talking about the drive where you drive a car. I'm talking about the drive to achieve something greater than yourself. The drive to reach heights that no one could ever dream of. The drive to get up and do something. And while you're driving, I want you to turn. The same way that you turn right, turn left, turn around, turn back, turn front. I want you to turn your eyes, your attention to the people affected by this motion. Turn your eyes to that person who's dying to find someone like them in a world of chaos and uncertainty. Turn your eyes to that person who finds better help online because no one around them is helping. Turn your eyes to that person who just wants to find someone who understands. Turn your eyes to that person who just needs a good doom scroll. Turn your eyes to that person who would like an escape, if even just for a moment. That person who discovers that new popular dance move online. That person who discovers their new favorite show online. That person who discovers a helping hand, not a hurting heart online. That person who discovers their passion online. As a matter of fact, that person who discovers a summary of historical events broken down into terms that even a 2-year-old can understand online. Turn your eyes to that person who just wants to be themselves. And now that you've reached the end of the island, it's time to stop. Stop and think with me for a moment. Should we really choose to rob these rapidly growing children of some freedom in an even more rapidly growing world? Should we really choose to limit those wonderful, creative minds for so long? There is a better way to do this. Mr. Speaker, let's go to church. We all sin, just like how Adam and Eve sinned and ate the forbidden fruit in the garden, even with God telling them not to. But here's the thing, Mr. Speaker. Although God was watching over Adam and Eve, they thought he wouldn't notice. God was always there, monitoring, ensuring that they were healthy, always checking up on them. And in the same way, that's what we as parents should also be doing. We should be monitoring our children. We should be checking that our child is using social media in a healthy manner. We should be checking that our child is engaged in the appropriate conversations online. We should be checking that our child is using the correct websites. We should be checking that our child is always okay. And I say we, because I am one who aspires to have children when I grow up. And oh yes, trust me, I know this does not apply to me, but I'm thinking about how it will affect my children, our children in the future. Mr. Speaker, as time goes on, the world continues to advance using the power of technology online. So by limiting the extent at which our children can be involved in this advancing world, trust me, we are not helping. We're only making it worse. It's like trying to cover your child's eyes when there's a kissing scene in the movie. Oh, that makes them even more curious, Mr. Speaker. There will be so many situations where your child just happens to be exposed to something you didn't account for. But that is our job as parents. We adopt. We shouldn't try to shelter and baby them when they're no longer babies. We should keep a closer eye on them. We should take the time to understand how social media works and develop an appropriate, safe, but still enjoyable algorithm for them before we give them their first phone. We should continue to monitor what they say and do on social media so we know that our child isn't becoming a big bully or being bullied. And if we physically can't be there, we should get an app that does it for us. Bark, Custodio, M-Spy. There are so many options right now, and as the world continues to grow, there will be more. Mr. Speaker, imagine saying to your child, I love you, sweet sugar plum, but you can only talk to John, Enzo, Taylor, and Jean? What if they want to talk to Marcus, who 1,000 miles away? Because neither John, Enzo, Taylor, or Jane can relate to what they're feeling. As a matter of fact, how would they even know markets exist in the first place? A cruise? A flight? A hotel overseas? Think about the money. The world only gets more expensive. I am sure we all wish it only got cheaper, right? But a way where you can meet new people without paying for a plane ticket? Oh, that sounds cheap. But let's get a bit local. Here, you can take your driving test at 17. Before that age, you shouldn't be driving. Yet, I'm sure some of us let our children drive anyway. Why? Because we want to be sure that when it's time for our children to grow wings and fly, they'll do it safely. We want to be sure that our child knows how to react quickly on the road and avoid another accident, another loss. We want to be sure that our child is a confident driver because we know they want to start driving away for some extra freedom. And for the law-abiding citizens who don't train their children young, they rely on the driving instructors to prepare their children for them. Police, cover your ears, but let's say in my case, 5 years of learning how to drive compared to a few months from the time you turn 17. You're holding them back for 16 years of their life and then expecting them to adjust quickly and pick up on something so new, so foreign to them. In the same way, that's what we're doing here. We're holding our children back from a social media dominant world and we're dropping everything on them all at once. How do you think a 16-year-old would react? They just want to give up. Yes, you probably get children who don't rely on social media, but you also get children who miss out on jobs because now the job requires some understanding of social media in the year 2036. Some understanding of how the algorithm works. Some understanding of how to properly and effectively market the business online. Mr. Speaker, think about it this way. You need to get from West Bay to East End, but you don't have a car, so you wait at the bus stop. The bus finally comes, but all you see are unfamiliar faces. Or, as a matter of fact, you see Ricky, who used to call you Big Ed when you were younger. And for that reason, you say, not today, Bobo, and decide to wait for the next bus. So the bus leaves, and you are stuck there, waiting, thinking that there'll always be another bus. Sorry to break it to you, Mr. Speaker, but that was the last bus, ever. You didn't get on the bus when you had the chance, and now you're left behind. No one can give you a ride because all the people who are left behind with you also relied on that bus. But that was the final trip, the final chance to hop on the bandwagon, the train of social media, and now it will take you ages to walk and catch up. That is the gap we're giving our children. A false start in a 400-meter race, but letting the race go on anyway. A false start in a 10K, but you're getting told just catch up. I am sure you can ask all the long-distance runners around you. It's not that easy. So why don't we stop and think about this just a bit longer? There are better ways. By the time our children catch up with that bus, trust me, it'll already be in Brock, then Little, then a whole new country. We need our children to see that bus, ignore that Ricky who called you Big Ed, and get on. It's like the saying goes, time waits on no man, and neither does the world. So let's not hold them back. Instead, let's support them every step of the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now call the mover of the motion to exercise her right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I would like to say how extremely proud I am to be surrounded by youths who are able to stand up for what they believe respectfully and responsibly with such authority. You all have expressed your personal views on this subject matter debate, whether you're standing strongly for the motion, against it, or requesting it to be re-evaluated so the public knows exactly what our Parliament's plan is regarding social media for our youths. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make something clear. The public may claim that this debate is biased because of our age, because we're teens. But I would like to state clearly that no one in this room sitting in these chairs will be under this legislation. We are here to speak on behalf of our children, the ones who will grow up with this technology. And everyone in this room has agreed that it is not about choosing between freedom and safety. It is about finding the responsible balance between the two, with or without the legislation. Mr. Speaker, Caymanian youth should not be the guinea pigs of this trend. I urge the members of our parliament to stop, take some time, and have a conversation about what we have said. The public is watching you. We are watching you. And we hope you are listening, because when this topic is brought back up, I expect it to be debated. We expect a discussion, not a blind agreement, not a contradictory piece of paper that talks about what you did not grow up with. We are your youths. Listen to us. We see things that you don't. So I suggest that this parliament forms an alliance with our youths, that anything regarding us, our future, and our children's future, you will ask us and consider our points of views. We are more than grateful for this opportunity. This debate may be the first time, but it definitely should not and will not be the last time our voices are heard. Mr. Speaker, as we have heard from my colleagues, this is not just a youth issue. It is a social one. And as youth, we're calling for more thoughtful, nuanced, and evidence-based approach. I urge this House to recognize that limitations, when done right, can protect our youth without rushing into a trend that has failed before. Once again, I thank you all for being brave enough to voice your opinions on behalf of that 7-year-old with an iPhone, on behalf of that 15-year-old artist, and on behalf of yourselves, the imaginative, adventurous childhood we all had, and what our youths, our future, should get a chance to experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Leader. Now, the question is, be it therefore resolved that the government considers the introduction of legislation to prohibit access to social media platforms by persons under the age of 16 years within the Cayman Islands as a child protection and public health measure. And be it further resolved that the government considers that any such legislation shall place primary responsibility for compliance, age verification, and enforcement on social media platform operators, and shall not criminalize or penalize children or young persons. And be it further resolved that the government considers that social media platforms shall be defined as digital services for social interaction and content sharing, and shall exclude educational platforms, messaging services used primarily for private communication, essential services required for school or public services. And be it further resolved that the government considers that the proposed framework shall include proportionate regulatory sanctions for non-compliant platforms while ensuring safeguards for data privacy, user rights, and constitutional protections. And be it further resolved that the government considers accompanying the legislation with public education initiatives, including digital literacy programs for parents and accessible mental health resources for young people. And be it further resolved that the government considers that the legislation shall be subject to periodic review to ensure it is consistent with constitutional protections and remains consistent with human rights obligations and the principle of proportionality. And be it further resolved that the government considers commencing stakeholder consultation and legislative drafting without delay, recognizing the urgency of protecting children from demonstrable and preventable digital harms, and affirms that this resolution shall not be construed as an endorsement or censorship, surveillance, or content-based regulation, but as a child protection and public health measure, grounded in evidence, proportionality, and the best interests of the child. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, no.
No. No.
No.
I recognize the elected member for East End.
Mr. Speaker, may I have a division, please?
Sergeant of Arms, could you ring the bell, please? We will now wait for 3 minutes to take the division. Seeing as everybody is here, Madam Clerk, please take the division.
Honorable Renaya Berry.
Aye.
Honorable Zaina Doctor.
No.
Mr. Evelyn Powell.
No.
Ms. Janae Sturdivant.
Aye.
Ms. Janelle Cahoon.
Aye.
Ms. Chloe Reed.
No.
Mr. Raldane Thomas.
Aye.
Mr. Rain Hardin.
No.
Ms. Jalitza Ebanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tegan McFarlane.
No.
Mr. Jordan McDonald.
Aye.
Honorable Johanna O'Connor.
No.
Honorable Leah Warren.
No.
Miss Sienna Bryan.
No.
Miss Olivia Kane.
No.
Miss Reese Lee Dewar.
No.
Miss Antonia McDonald.
No.
Mr. Jaron Reynolds Velasquez.
No.
Mr. Dominic Anderson.
Aye.
The results of the division are ayes 7 to noes 12. Private Members Motion number 3 of 2026, limiting social media for children under the age of 16, has failed. That concludes the proceeding of this honorable first summer youth parliament. I will now call on the honorable premier to move a motion for the adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of this honorable first summer youth parliament sine die. But Mr. Speaker, before you put the vote on the motion, I wish to express a vote of thanks. On behalf of the government, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Youth Parliament Organizing Committee, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, Honorable Perlina McGaw-Lumsden, Mr. Roy Tatum, Mr. Dwayne Seymour, Ms. Zena Marin-Chin, Ms. Nordra Walcott, Ms. Patricia Priestley. Your countless hours of planning, organization, mentorship, and behind-the-scenes work has made this first summer youth parliament a phenomenal experience. Your dedication and commitment to developing the next generation of leaders is deeply appreciated. And this parliament could not have been the success it is without your efforts. As we bring this parliament to a close, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to every youth parliament member and those who debated today in this honorable house. Thank you for your diligence, preparation, hard work, and most importantly, for giving up part of your summer to be here. Knowing you could have been spending your time at Rum Point, dipping a mango in the water, working on your town, but rather you stepped up for your civil duties, putting in the hours, and you came here today, truly demonstrating your dedication. To the parents and guardians, thank you for the pickups and the drop-offs, and sorry you had to overhear the late night, early morning oral rehearsals. I know you all share the same anxieties we do, but without your consistent support and encouragement, we would be lost. Finally, we give thanks to God for his guidance and wisdom. We are grateful for his blessings, for the talents he has given to each and every one of us, and for the strength and encouragement that has carried us throughout this experience. May we leave here inspired to continue serving our country with integrity, humility, and purpose. Thank you all. God bless, and safe travels home.
The motion is that this honorable first summer youth parliament does stand adjourned sine die. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
The ayes have it. This honorable summer youth parliament is now adjourned sine die.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this proceedings to a close, I want to extend our deepest, most heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you, the youth parliamentarians here today. Your contributions have been nothing short of outstanding. What we witnessed today was a masterful, mature display of democracy. We heard an incredible variety of fresh perspectives, points that have never been raised before in our previous discussions, alongside vital arguments that were reiterated and supported with brilliant new clarity. You provided this country with a beautifully balanced framework of things to consider. You didn't just repeat talking points, you brought real, live texture to a very complex matter. To our youth parliamentarians, I want you to know that your words have not fallen on deaf ears. I can tell you authoritatively that the whispers have already started among my colleagues and the elected government. Real sitting members of parliament have already been taking notes and talking about your exceptional contributions here today. In fact, many have already started taking serious notes, capturing the specific takeaways and the solutions that you delivered on this floor. Today's debate has been a resounding success because it did exactly what we hoped it would do. It drove deep thought, challenged perspectives, and it acted as a true unfiltered vehicle of public consultation. You are the key stakeholders of this policy, and today you have given your country the authentic consultation that it desperately needed. On behalf of myself, on behalf of the Youth Parliament Committee, the Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Perlina McGaw-Lumsden, my apologies, Madam Speaker, Madam Deputy, to my Honourable Member from Red Bay, Roy Tatum, on behalf of my Honourable Member, Dwayne Seymour, and all the elected members of Parliament of the Cayman Islands, I thank you once again. I can safely assure you that the public consultation on this incredibly important motion will not end here, as the government and the opposition will continue to work collaboratively on this issue. The insights, the passion, and the wisdom that you displayed here today will carry on with us. We'll work together to ensure that the true spirit of this motion you debated and the essence of the contributions you made become a success for the Cayman Islands. You have represented your schools, your parents, and your peers, and yourselves, most importantly, with absolute excellence. You are an amazing crop of young leaders, and I'm proud of you, and you should be immensely proud of yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings the official end to the first ever Summer Youth Parliament debate. Please encourage your friends and your family to watch and listen to the debate if they haven't done so already. May God bless you all and have a wonderful day.